expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Today I am joined by documentary maker Daniel Wing, who is still trying to find out who murdered his mother 30 years on. He's also created a documentary called Who Murdered You, Mum? Daniel, can you just tell us the story of what happened to your mother, what you know?
So when I was 1 year old in 1992, my mum, Tina, was murdered. My dad went on trial for it and was acquitted. And the case went unsolved and has been unsolved for 32 years. My nan, who raised me, amazing woman, passed away sadly 2 years ago, and that kind of sent me on a quest for answers.
So your documentary then, what are you hoping to achieve with it?
I am fighting for justice for my mum. I have had a meeting with the police and they are looking to see what they have and are looking to reopen investigation if they can find new and compelling evidence. What's interesting now is speaking to other families who are actually going through the trauma and experience of murder.
Yeah.
My mum didn't get the opportunity to be a mum. What would my life have been? I'm now 33 years old with no parents. And it's that kind of thing. It's a very, I guess, lonely journey in what I'm experiencing. That's why I wanted to make this film, because I hadn't had the opportunity to be able to grieve my mother and know who she was. And that was really what this journey was about. It was about finding out who she was and being able to grieve. Everyone had the opportunity, although terrible circumstances, to be able to go to the funeral and have that moment, and I never had that opportunity.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 31st of December, or on Wednesday, the 1st of December, if you happen to be in New Zealand. I'm Tom Harwood. I said December, I meant January. Oh well, we'll try that again next hour. Arise, Sir Sadiq Khan. Reactions range from bemusement to fury as the Prime Minister is accused of rewarding failure, handing a knighthood to the London mayor who presided over a surging knife crime rate and broken promises. Elsewhere, the former head of the UK Border Force says the government will never solve the small boat crisis unless it brings in an effective deterrent, as nearly 37,000 people cross this year alone. And firework displays across the country, from Blackpool to Edinburgh's annual Hogmanay Street party, have been cancelled due to severe weather conditions. More later. Well, a very happy new year to you. Throughout this programme, we're going to be darting around the world, seeing people who are already ringing in the new year. Auckland in New Zealand has celebrated. They did that around an hour ago. And in just 59 minutes' time, we'll be live in Sydney for their spectacular fireworks display as they ring in the new year in Australia. It's an exciting time. It's only 12 hours to go now until we say Happy New Year here on Greenwich Mean Time. But much more besides New Year festivities today on Good Afternoon Britain. Some concerning news for health services across the country. In England and in Wales, critical incidents have been declared. We'll be looking closely at how the NHS is holding up this winter. But also, too, we'll be looking at those firework displays. Where is OK, where is not? We're going to be talking to weather experts so you can plan your night accordingly. And we want to hear from you. What's going on in your part of the country? You can get involved. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved in that conversation. Of course, one person who won't be worried about the weather is Sir Keir Starmer. Yes, the Prime Minister is in Madeira. We'll be looking at a special video of his sunshine tobogganing a little bit later in the programme. All of that's to come after your very latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 12 o'clock. These are your headlines. Former England football manager Gareth Southgate, actor Stephen Fry and gardener Alan Titchmarsh are among some of the famous names included on this year's New Year's Honours list. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has also been knighted, sparking fury among some amid London's spiralling crime rate. Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of rewarding failure as knife crime has increased in the capital by 50% since Khan took office in 2016. The Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philps said Londoners would be furious. The London Mayor was also responsible for rolling out the controversial ULEZ scheme in Greater London, which critics say hit the poorest workers the hardest. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Sir Sadiq said he was truly humbled to receive the honour. New Zealand has ushered in the new year with a fireworks display in Auckland. But as the world prepares to welcome in 2025, severe weather is set to hamper Britain's New Year's events. The Edinburgh Hogmanay celebrations have been cancelled due to weather conditions. The Met Office have issued amber weather warnings as snow, gales and up to 5 inches of rain are set to batter the UK this new year. 2 fireworks displays planned for 6 p.m. and midnight in Newcastle's Quayside have been cancelled because of the weather, while Blackpool and North Yorkshire are also reporting cancellations. Meanwhile, City Hall in London says they're monitoring weather conditions ahead of the capital's annual New Year's Eve fireworks display. In other news, Tony Blair's Labour government pushed on with plans to open UK's borders to Eastern Europe, despite mounting concerns from senior ministers. That's according to newly released official files. The National Archives has published Cabinet Office files from 2003 to 2004, when Tony Blair was Prime Minister. The documents revealed the issue of immigration was top of the agenda, with senior ministers urging the then Prime Minister to delay granting employment rights to Eastern and Central European workers when the EU expanded in 2004. But Mr Blair's government went ahead with plans despite the warnings. The government will never solve the small boats crisis unless it brings in an effective deterrent, GB News has been told. The former head of the UK Border Force says efforts by Sir Keir Starmer to smash the gangs cannot succeed through law enforcement alone. It comes as the number of illegal migrants who crossed the Channel this year reached nearly 37,000. That's 25% higher than last year's total. Tony Smith told us more needs to be done to put an end to the crisis.
What I haven't seen is a real deterrent. The only real change we've seen from this government is the abolition of the Rwanda scheme, which would have said to people, look, I'm sorry, we're not going to consider your asylum application or your human rights application in this country. You can go to Rwanda for that. I thought that was the boldest attempt since Australia to try and set up an interdiction policy, which would have been a deterrent and would have made people perhaps who are already in a safe country think twice about making that perilous journey.
Now, New Year's Eve revellers in Wales are being urged to drink sensibly to help the country's ambulance service, which has declared a critical incident after a huge increase in demand. The service said there were 340 calls waiting to be answered when the incident was declared last night. At the same time, more than half of the Trust ambulance vehicles were waiting to hand over patients outside the hospitals. And after 8 years in one of the longest and most bitter divorces in Hollywood history, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie have reached a settlement. 49-year-old Jolie and 61-year-old Pitt were one of the Hollywood's most prominent couples for 12 years. The two Oscar winners, dubbed Brangelina, have 6 children together. Jolie filed for divorce in 2016 following a private jet flight from Europe, during which she said Pitt was abusive towards her and their children. While Jolie's lawyers have said a divorce settlement has now been reached, it is unclear whether it will end a long-running legal battle between the pair over a French vineyard. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 7 minutes past 12 and fury has erupted after London Mayor Sadiq Khan was knighted in the King's New Year Honours List. Well, Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of rewarding failure as knife crime has increased in the capital by 50% since Sadiq Khan took office back in 2016. The London Mayor was also, of course, responsible for rolling out the controversial ULEZ scheme in Greater London, which critics say hit poor workers the hardest. This all comes as the newly appointed Knight of the Realm said he was truly humbled to receive the honour. Well, what is it about these New Year's honours? Do they always go to politicians' friends? Joining me now is the constitutional expert, Daniel Britton. Daniel, thanks so much for being in the studio this afternoon. First of all, New Year's honours. What's the history of this sort of annual peculiarity?
I think it goes back to about 1890, which appears to be the first New Year's honours list. And actually, for the first 70, 80-odd years of it, it was declared on New Year's Day. Actually, we got impatient with finding out who they were, so it keeps on getting earlier, which is why they come out a day before. 1890 was the first date, but it didn't really get going in the present form until the middle of the First World War, 1917, when the government, the King, thought what was needed was an honours system which rewarded far bigger range of people, particularly people who'd been working on the war effort at that time. And in 1917, the Order of the British Empire was established. Not everyone likes that name. Some people have turned down an honour because of it. But that's the standard issue award now. MBEs, OBEs, CBEs, and then if you're very grand, KBE, DBE, GBE. And there is one GBE today, 2 GBEs. One as a woman, Jacqueline Wilson, the author. She's been upgraded from a plain old dame to a Dame Grand Cross. That's the top of the tree.
Of course it's top of the tree. It's got GB in it. Yes. GB News, we're very...
They did it just for you, clearly. Yes. So that system, the Order of the British Empire, is the everyday honour, which most of the 1,200-odd given out today are part of that.
1,200 honours given today. That is an extraordinary number.
And actually, only quite a small number are politicians. But they do tend to be the ones you've heard of.
Yes.
Because, you know, if you look through the MBE list, well, I was glad to see that my hero, Tom Baker from Doctor Who, got an MBE. But most MBEs are for local charitable work, maybe more modest sporting achievements in the Olympics, things like that. You know, you won't know 95% of the MBE list when you read them.
It's fascinating to learn that this modern honours system that we talk of is really only around 100 years old. Because when I think of a Knight of the Realm, I'm thinking King Arthur. I'm thinking thousands of years of history.
Well, in the case of the knighthood, you're right, because that dates back to about 1300. The reign of Henry III. Knights are by far the oldest form of honour. Now, they didn't necessarily turn out to be so much of an honour at the beginning. A knight was someone mounted on a horse who could gather together some troops. That was a knight. Right. Then they progressed and sort of supervised royal tournaments and things like that. And then after a while, they said, well, actually, just give us the lolly and you can be a knight.
No chainmail required. Although I do remember the politician, the MP Sir David Amess,
yes,
of course, was so sadly taken from us in a terrorist attack not too long ago. When he received his knighthood, he actually got on a horse, put on the chainmail and had a photo shoot, which I think is... He must have been just about the only knight of the realm to have done that in the modern age. But
why does that not surprise me? But he was thrilled. And most people are rarely thrilled to be honoured in some way, whether it be a peerage or an MBE. People are thrilled to be recognised, and that is the point of the honours system. And pretty well every country does have an honours system. All our closest neighbours do. I mean, France is a republic and has an honours system, but Belgium and Netherlands and Denmark, they even have knighthood grades in some of their honours. But I don't think people go around calling themselves Sir in those countries.
Is that a uniquely British thing, or I suppose Commonwealth thing to some extent?
It seems to be, yeah, Commonwealth, Order of New Zealand, Order of Australia. Canada banned anyone taking that sort of thing. Yeah, but remember there was a bit of an outcry when, in Australia, the then Conservative Prime Minister...
Tony Abbott.
Yeah, gave the Duke of Edinburgh a knighthood.
Yes.
And people were really astonished because there are very, very occasional knighthoods given in Australia. Very, very rare. So it was quite a surprise when the Duke of Edinburgh got one.
That helped to lead to Tony Abbott's fall as Prime Minister of Australia, I think. Because it was, I mean, Duke of Edinburgh, I think everyone can accept as a stand-up guy, was a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
He was already Prince Philip. I mean, 4 titles from Prime Minister.
Oh, yes, Duke of Edinburgh, Earl of Merioneth, Baron Greenwich. He had a host of titles, absolute host of titles.
Some Greek titles, I think, as well, perhaps?
I don't know, but you'll probably know more than me.
Well, I do have to ask you about these politicians.
Yes.
Because we have seen Emily Thornberry, who... was in the shadow cabinet, didn't make it into the cabinet. Is this a bit of a consolation prize for Emily Thornberry? Sort of a put up, shut up, don't criticise me, sorry I kicked you out of the cabinet, here's a consolation prize?
I think you could easily see it as a consolation prize. But then you see Andy Street in West Midlands, the Conservative Mayor of West Midlands, 2 terms there, now Sir Andy Street. So, you know, and that was for, I think, a very good job of work, and you would argue, some would argue, that Sadiq Khan equally a big job of work after over 3 terms.
No, it is interesting that Sadiq Khan has, of course, won many elections, although I think one of the things that does stick in it for a lot of people about Sadiq Khan is, despite winning these elections, it's quite hard to see what he's actually done with the office.
Well, obviously people keep voting for him. Some honours did go to politicians and got taken back by the palace, particularly Knights of the Garter, Knights of the Thistle, and Order of Merit and Companion of Honour, which the, you know, we've had one Companion of Honour today. They had started creeping in, and they had started going to politicians, you know, much more, and nominations by politicians. Actually, the palace controls all those directly.
The palace can slap those down.
Companion of Honour is the one quite often used by the palace for politicians. Ken Clarke, for example, is a Companion of Honour, and that's quite common. Order of Merit, that's people like David Attenborough. Knight of the Garter, yes. Tony Blair, John Major, but also Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Right. Well, very interesting indeed. Thank you so much, Daniel Britton, for explaining the complicated and historical, perhaps in some senses, not quite so historic system of honours we have today. Let's broaden this out now. Delighted to be joined by my panel, Ryan Mark Parsons and Stephanie Tecci. Ryan Mark, let's start with you. What do you make of some of the more headline honours that were announced overnight?
Well, I was mainly concerned with Sadiq Khan. I just can't believe this sanctimonious little twit of a mayor has received one of the highest honours that you can achieve in this country. I mean, like you said at the top of the show, 50% increase in knife crime across his leadership. You look at housing, 88% reduction in affordable housing across his time as mayor. I mean, London isn't safe. There's about 40 knife crime incidents per day, according to the Met Police. This isn't getting any better. I mean, anecdotally, when I go out in London, the same with my peers, a lot of young people are fearing, you know, just going out having fun in the streets, even if there are places to go. I mean, his appointment of Amy LeMay, paying her over £100,000 a year for what? Exactly. I think it's been a total shambles. And the fact he's now a knight is absurd.
Right, well, Stephanie Tetchy, I suppose Sadiq Khan, to focus still on him, he has been elected 3 times, so I suppose that balances that out.
It has been, but I think it's a case of better the devil you know for a lot of voters. We haven't had a really strong candidate to really give Sadiq Khan a run for his money. But if we think as Londoners, how we live here day to day, nothing has improved about this city. In fact, it's quite dark at the moment, it's quite bleak. And to end 2024 by giving him such a high accolade, it actually makes a mockery of Londoners who at the moment are going through the cost of living crisis, women who don't feel safe on the streets of London, and also just a general morale of it. I think they've definitely read the room wrong here.
It is interesting when you look at the results that Sadiq Khan has achieved in his various elections. He's never once got over 50% of the vote. It's gone to second rounds, transfers, squeaking along. But if you look at someone like Andy Burnham up in Manchester, he gets in on 70% of the vote. Even Ben Houchin up in the Tees Valley, he got in on near enough 70% of the vote the time before last. I mean, there are mayors who have carried huge landslides in electoral victories. But Ryan Mark, Sadiq Khan, not one of them.
No, well, I think that's symptomatic of his popularity, really. And you just look at what he focuses on as mayor. I mean, it should be hyper-focused on London, but you see him talking about climate change and Gaza. I mean, why is a mayor of London concerned with what's going on in Palestine and Israel?
And yet, what Sadiq Khan might say is that one of his big focuses has been on air quality. It's been very controversial for a lot of people, but he has made it his mission to ban the most polluting cars from London, tax the most polluting cars, and institute this London-wise ULEZ zone.
But that's not what Londoners are really concerned about. Londoners are worried about how are they getting paid, how can they afford their bills, and these are the kind of areas Sadiq Khan is missing. He's tick-boxing for everything else, which sounds good to the mainstream news, but individually, he's not doing anything to help us as a city. London used to be one of the best cities in the world. Now we're just going down year by year by year. But, hey, we're going to end the year and make him Sir Sadiq Khan.
Well, talking about the end of the year, of course, in London, we're expecting a fireworks display. There's some concern that there might not be a fireworks display. There's been one cancelled in Blackpool. Of course, Hogmanay celebrations up in Edinburgh have been cancelled as well. Do you think that the mayor would be right or wrong if he were to cancel the firework display for London, the nation's capital?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he does. I think that's sort of very characteristic of him. I'm actually going to Parliament to watch the fireworks later tonight, so fingers crossed there is actually a fireworks display. But yes, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's in his nature to do something so melancholic and depressing and boring as that.
Stephanie, a word on the fireworks?
I don't think he will cancel it. Come on, New Year's Eve is the one moment for every city to show their sparkles and fireworks, and for London not to be a part of that would be an absolute disgrace.
Now, of course, there have been other honours in the New Year's honours list, not just the mayor, not just politicians. There have also been community champions, people running charities who have been given honours as well. Ryan Mark, do you think the honours system as a whole is up to scratch this year, or does it need some reform?
I think overall it does need a bit of reform. I mean, I was happy to see other names like Gareth Southgate. I was happy to see him receive a knighthood. I thought he did a great job as his time as England manager. I thought he really humanised the England football players. But yes, I think overall sometimes, I mean, I know people that have received honours personally, and I think that the way in which they go about it is maybe a bit suspicious. I know there's also companies you might be aware where you can actually pay to get your nomination checked and screened and up to scratch in order to get a successful nomination.
Final word to you, Stephanie.
Well, I personally feel really uncomfortable where people in the public eye are being honoured because they're just doing what they are being paid to do. I think it's all about championing the unsung heroes. These are the people that we need and who are actually making a difference in this country. Someone are being a celebrity. As much as I love showbiz and all the stuff, celebrities will do celebrity stuff. They're not changing the everyday life of people in the UK.
Well, Stephanie Tetchy, Ryan Mark Parsons, thanks so much for being with us. You, of course, be with us throughout the programme a little bit later as well. And, of course, Daniel Britton, thank thank you for your contribution as well. Huge amount to get through this programme. But if you didn't get everything on your Christmas list this year, how about £50,000? Yes, tax-free cash you could get in the new year. It really could all be yours in our biggest ever Great British giveaway. Here's all the details you need to enter.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, good luck to all those who enter. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come in today's programme. Indeed, there's been a New Year's address released already from a senior politician who's made it from a palace. I'm not going to tell you who, but stick with us to see this extraordinary message after this.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Britain's Royal Collection of Art is one of the most important and largest in the world. And it's also one of the last great European royal collections to remain intact. And built up over many centuries, it has extraordinary depth. And curators have delved into its riches to produce an exhibition of Italian drawings between 1450 and 1600. There are household names here: Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. Some of the drawings are complete works in themselves. Some are studies for images that would appear in much larger pieces. And some are anatomical studies, which enabled these artists to draw the human form in all its perfection.
This is the earliest drawing in the exhibition of around 1450, and it's made by Fra Angelico, the great Florentine painter. It may seem an obvious thing to say, but we only have drawings like this if they have survived. And these drawings were not seen at the time as works of art. They were workshop studies. They were as functional as a hammer or a paintbrush, if you like, in the workshop. But the fact that a drawing would survive from 1450 to the present day shows that first it was useful, and it was a work that would have been referred to constantly in the artist's studio, and only later was it valued by collectors as an exemplar of the artist's genius, if you like, the way in which we might think of it today. So a drawing like this, which is in almost perfect condition, has got a history of being valued for different reasons from when it was produced to the present.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. This is 25 minutes past 12 and an interesting New Year's message from a party leader now. This is a party leader who has recorded this New Year's message from a palace, although not a royal palace. Blenheim Palace, built, of course, by the Duke of Marlborough after defeating the French in the start of the 1700s, if I'm not mistaken. A palace to rival Versailles, as it was once known, and of course also the birthplace of Winston Churchill. Well, who was the party leader to record this New Year's message at this strange location for a politician? It was Nigel Farage.
Well, I'm fortunate today to be giving you this New Year's message from Blenheim Palace. Not only a magnificent place and a wonderful place to come and visit, but of course the birthplace of Winston Churchill, who represented something when this country was indeed a great country, not just in terms of looking after its own people, but in standing up for the right things in the world.
Well, goodness me, was that Nigel Farage MP, member of the House of Commons? Looked a bit more regal from where I'm sitting, but let's digest it now with the senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calgie. Christian, thanks for joining us here on Good Afternoon Britain on New Year's Eve of all times. First, or perhaps thanks not for joining us, but of course we know the weather across the United Kingdom is very, very temperamental today. Delighted to still be joined in the studio by my panel, no fear, Ryan Mark Parsons and of course Stephanie Tetchy. Stephanie, looking at that Nigel Farage message, we just saw the first few seconds of it. The outward shots, the palace, the grandeur. Is this man trying to become Prime Minister or King?
Of course he is, and he's got it right. You know what? This is what we need. You know what? He's been hanging around with Trump and Elon Musk. It's all about campaigning the right way and actually grabbing people's attention. And he said it right. It's about going to a place where we want to make Britain great again. So for him, he's picked the right location, I feel, to spread that message.
Ryan Mark, has he been spending a bit too much time with Trump, too much time in the gilded rooms with the golden chairs and all the rest of it? I mean, he's a politician, not a king.
I know. I mean, you would think as leader of reform he'd want to try and connect with more of the working class voters, but I think it's really the antithesis. It looks very regal, like you said. I think he's absorbed so much ego from Trump and maybe Elon Musk hanging out with them a bit too much. It's very... Well, look, it's got a touch of American ego, but it also has that sort of royal element as well. He has a right to brag. I mean, Reform is doing well with membership numbers. I think it's very fitting. It's very prime ministerial, I would argue, as well. Maybe a touch OTT. But, you know, it's fun. It's quite camp.
It is.
It's quite camp. I think it's Christmassy and camp.
My goodness. On that note, I believe we've got Christian Calgie from The Express back up with us now. Christian, thanks for joining us. And I know the connection's going to be a bit dodgy, but we'll persevere. Your impressions of Nigel Farage's New Year's message?
Well, I think it gets across a very interesting message. He's clearly continuing to sort of try and turn Reform into the continuation of the old Conservative Party that voters used to vote for. That's Reform. In a way, they're trying to position themselves not as an insurgent party, but as the sort of the natural inheritors of the Conservative crown. And that's very clear what they're trying to do with this message from Blenheim. I also think Churchill's great-nephew is a Reform UK supporter, so I wonder if that's how Nigel managed to nab that filming location. My concern, that would be my guess. I think it's very interesting, and I think if you look back, isn't it remarkable that despite Labour winning one of the most historic election victories in our modern British history, for me, 2024 feels more the year of Nigel Farage than it does the year of Keir Starmer. It's been an incredible year for Reform, and that's the problem for the Tory party.
Yeah, it does seem that Nigel Farage is able to grab that media narrative so much more easily. But of course, you do mention Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, we should say, on this day of New Year's honours. Let's not forget his own honorific. And Christian, on your own Twitter feed, you've shared a video of what the Prime Minister has been up to over the last day or so. Shall we take a look?
Let's.
We're going to see if we can pull that up, because the Prime Minister is in Madeira of all places. There he is. Well, this is dry tobogganing that goes on famously in Madeira. And there Keir Starmer is. You can just about see him in a trademark dark shirt with a bit of a crowd around him. Christian, this is, of course, the Prime Minister's first holiday since the general election.
Yeah, and do you know what? I'm willing to stick my neck out on this and say it's actually well-deserved. I think we need our prime ministers and our political leaders to be well-rested, and it's been a heck of a year. And actually, as far as I'm aware, Keir Starmer didn't have a holiday for a very long time before the general election. So I'm glad he's got a break. I think it's a
Christian, I think your line is just breaking up a little bit there, but we absolutely get your message, and thanks so much for joining us here on GB News. Really appreciate it. From presumably somewhere where the weather is really rather affecting that connection and that line. Thanks again to the senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calby, and of course my panel too, who are nobly and valiantly sitting in for the show. Now, with 2025 just around the corner, today at GB News, we're saying thank you, and we're sending our viewers a very special message.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, less than half an hour now until we take you live to Sydney, where the marvellous fireworks display is not being put off by bad weather. That to come still after your latest news headlines.
Tom, thank you. Your headlines at 12:32. Former England football manager Gareth Southgate, actor Stephen Fry and gardener Alan Titchmarsh are among some of the famous names included on this year's New Year's Honours list. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has also been knighted, sparking fury among some amid London's spiralling crime rate. Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of rewarding failure as knife crime has increased in the capital by 50% since Khan took office in 2016. The Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said Londoners would be furious. The London Mayor was also responsible for rolling out the controversial ULEZ scheme in Greater London, which critics say hit the poorest workers the hardest. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Sir Sadiq has said he was truly humbled to receive the honour. New Zealand has ushered in the new year with a firework display in Auckland. But as the world prepares to welcome 2025, severe weather is set to hamper Britain's New Year's events. The Edinburgh Hogmanay celebrations have been cancelled due to severe weather conditions. The Met Office have issued amber warnings as snow, gales and up to 5 inches of rain are set to batter Britain this new year. 2 fireworks displays planned for 6 p.m. and midnight on Newcastle's quayside have been cancelled, while Blackpool and North Yorkshire are also reporting cancellations. Meanwhile, City Hall in London says they're monitoring weather conditions ahead of the capital's annual New Year's Eve fireworks display this evening. In other news, South Korean investigators looking into a jet crash that killed 179 people are examining the placement of a concrete barrier near the end of a runway after an expert called it verging on criminal. Jeju Air's Boeing 737-800 crashed, landed and skidded down the runway before smashing into a structure placed beyond the tarmac and erupted into flames. Investigators have begun inspecting the plane's 2 black boxes, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder. Jeju Air CEO has pledged to repair trust by strengthening safety measures after the plane crashed at South Korea's Muan International Airport on Sunday. And New Year's Eve revellers in Wales are being urged to drink sensibly to help the country's ambulance service, which has declared a critical incident after a huge increase in demand. The service said there were more than 340 calls waiting to be answered when the incident was declared last night. At the same time, more than half of the Trust's ambulance vehicles were waiting to hand over patients outside hospitals. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the year, it is going to be unsettled, outbreaks of rain and also some snow and some strong winds too, with multiple Met Office warnings in force, so do keep an eye on those if you're out celebrating New Year's Eve tonight. And it's all because low pressure is taking hold, dragging in some frontal systems, bringing in a squeeze in the isobars, so some strong winds and some outbreaks of rain. This lingers around northern parts of Wales, northern parts of England through much of the afternoon. It generally clears parts of Scotland, but plenty of blustery showers here and likely to see some disruption as a result of earlier rain across Scotland, where we have the amber warning issued. But across the far south and southeast, that's going to be the driest of the weather, but still plenty of cloud around, but largely mild across the south and southeast too. As we head into this evening, we'll still see longer spells of rain just to the north of Scotland, bringing in some snow across parts of Shetland, and fairly cloudy with some rain drizzle to the south of this, similar across Northern Ireland too. And we'll continue to see those longer spells of rain across parts of Wales, northern and central parts of England. This could be heavy and rather persistent at times, and still staying largely dry across the far south and southeast. But as we head into the evening, it is going to remain unsettled if you are out and about celebrating New Year's. Still continuing to see outbreaks of rain across northern and central parts. Dry to the south, yes, but it is going to be fairly windy here, and we're going to see plenty of showers move through across Scotland, these falling as snow, mainly across hills but also to lower levels too, and it is going to start to feel particularly chilly across northern areas too. Remaining slightly mild to the south, but through the day we'll start to see outbreaks of rain slowly creep their way in here, and it will start to turn chillier once this clears through too, with a very brisk northerly flow starting to cross the country to the north of this rain band. So bringing in some wintry showers and feeling very chilly in the wind too. Still slightly milder to the south, but it will turn chillier through the course of the afternoon.
The latest GB News travel.
Delays for the northbound side of the M6 as 3 lanes are closed to an overturned lorry from junctions 17 through to junction 18. On the M1, a lane closure to long-term roadworks continue from Chesterfield and Mansfield at 29 through to 28. Delays to be expected. Northbound on the M11, there is a lane closure to a broken down vehicle between junctions 6 through to 7 for Harlow, but traffic is coping well. On the M25, a lane closure again to long-term roadworks that continue from Seven Oaks through to the Clackett Lane services. And the A55 in Gwynedd, due to strong winds, it is 30 miles an hour between 9 at Treborth to 8 for Llanfair PG. There are also advisory restrictions in place on the bridge for any caravans, motorbikes and cyclists. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past midday. That means it's just 41 minutes until... No, it just means it's 21 minutes until those fireworks go off in Australia, so we'll be bringing you those live. But in the meantime, GB News has been told that the government will never solve the small boats crisis unless it brings in an effective deterrent. This all comes as the number of illegal migrants who crossed the Channel this year reached nearly 37,000. That's 25% higher than last year's total. Well, the former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith, told us that more needs to be done to put an end to the crisis.
The best tactics are disruption. The criminal justice system does not work well, in my experience, with international organised crime. The best you can really hope for is to disrupt the gangs, take their money off them, take them out of the business. Bringing people into the criminal justice system is really quite difficult to do. So, I mean, I think there has been an uptick in activity. I think, the outreach to other countries, other European countries and beyond is important. But this is international organised crime, so it's really difficult, for a UK agency agency, be that the new Border Security Council, the National Crime Agency, to be able to smash the gangs on their own. They need the cooperation of the Europeans, of the source and transit countries, so there's a really big overseas outreach element that's required if we're going to make significant progress into this industry. I think it's right that the government are talking to source and transit countries. That is a key objective, and I think that will help in disrupting the international organised crime gangs, but it's not a panacea. It's a lot of work to get an agreement with a single country on returns, because there's usually something in it for them. So I'll be really interested to see how the government gets on in getting those kinds of agreements. And there's a lot of countries out there where the migrants are coming through, be they source or transit countries. So it's quite a big undertaking for them. I think the EU countries, many of the member states, are now moving to the right on immigration. They are concerned, their communities are concerned about the levels, because they are now doing interdictions on the high seas between, places like Libya and Italy, which wasn't the case a couple of years ago. So I think the mood music is changing a little bit on how they patrol their external frontier. But we need to remember there's a huge number of migrants, asylum seekers already in the EU who'd very much like to come here. What I haven't seen is a real deterrent. The only real change we've seen from this government is the abolition of the Rwanda scheme, which would have said to people, look, I'm sorry, we're not going to consider your asylum application or your human rights application in this country. You can go to Rwanda for that. I thought that was a really bold attempt by the last government, although they never got anywhere with it because of continual legal challenges over a great many years to thwart it. I thought that was the boldest attempt since Australia to try and set up an interdiction policy, which would have been a deterrent and would have made people perhaps who are already in a safe country think twice about making that perilous journey.
There we go. Those were the words of the former head of the Border Force. But let's speak now to the content lead at the Centre for Migration Control, Charlie Downs. Charlie, thanks for joining us here on GB News on New Year's Eve, of all times. Let's talk about this issue. Would Rwanda have worked had it ever got off the ground?
I think that it would have worked better than any of the other measures that have been sort of trying to be brought in, because, as your guest just then said, deterrence, I think, is pretty effective. I also think, however, that it is really, it would be the thin end of the wedge, right? It would be the start of a far more robust approach to this problem, because the issues of legal and illegal migration are often kind of coupled together, but they are fundamentally different. As much as both are hugely impactful to our country, I would argue that both are the most pressing issues of our time. When it comes to illegal migration, research out of Pew in 2017 indicated that there could be as many as 1.2 million illegal migrants residing in the UK. Now, this was obviously 7 years ago. In the intervening years, we've seen hundreds of thousands of people come across the channel illegally on small boats, which is to say nothing of the people who come across on lorries, which is something that still goes on, but you don't hear as much about anymore because of the small boats. So we could be looking at a situation where there's maybe as many as 1.5 million, 2 million illegal migrants in the UK right now.
Most of those will be people who fly in legally and then overstay a visa in order to then claim.
Well, this is the problem. There's so many different routes that these people can come into the country through, whether it is what you just said, whether it's small boats, whether it's lorries. But the bottom line is, as long as people are allowed to legally reside, reside in the UK, having come here illegally, the law is not being enforced, because the law says that if you've come here illegally, you need to be removed. And that's the policy of any self-respecting nation. So until we have a serious conversation about removing the people who are currently here, I don't think we're going to see an end to the small boats or anything else, because if it's, if the perception is that you can just come here and get away with it, and you can just stay here if they don't catch you in the act, well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out how, what incentive structure that creates.
Charlie, is the issue here not that we have competing laws? There is the Nationality and Borders Act, which says anyone who comes across in a small boat is an illegal migrant. But there's also the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, which we're signed up to, which most countries in the world are signed up to, which gives anyone the right to claim asylum if they make it to British shores, which is why people go through hell or high water to come to get their feet on British shores, because then they enter that system and they've got the right to claim, the right to appeal. We've got competing laws in this area.
Well, let's just think about that year as well, Tom. 1951. This was in the aftermath of Europe being ravaged by, the most savage war the world has ever seen, at a time when there was genuine refugees fleeing their countries. Now we exist in a geopolitical situation where transport and communication technologies have advanced so far and so quickly that the law has not been able to catch up, because it's obvious. It really, all you need to do is take a look at some of the footage of the small boats and so on, and you'll see that these are not kind of destitute women and children. As everybody knows at this point, it's primarily young men. It's primarily young men, and there's only one reason that a fighting age male comes to the UK illegally, and that is because they don't want their name on the books. And why might they not want their name on the books? Well, again, it doesn't take a genius to figure out why you might want to slip through the net and not have your name written down anywhere. It's because you probably want to go into the criminal underworld, and that is something that happens, to a huge extent. But I think that
it could also be that you want free room and board, free hotel accommodation, a stipend from the UK government. Charlie, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks so much for joining us here, and a very happy New Year, however you are celebrating. Well, if you're celebrating at home, please do join us on GB News for the ultimate countdown to 2025. Yes, Patrick, Bev, Emily, Darren and Ben will all be together for a very special show tonight. GB News New Year's Live from 10 o'clock this evening. You won't want to miss it, and given the weather across the country, maybe it's best you stay in with us here at GB News. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more coming up on today's programme. Let's take a sneak peek at the scenes in Sydney. There's Sydney Harbour Bridge preparing for that miraculous firework display. We'll be there live very shortly.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As Strictly Come Dancing approaches its iconic Blackpool episode, marking halfway through the competition, visually impaired dancers across the country have spoken out about how groundbreaking the casting of Chris McCausland is, who suffers from, if I hope I'm saying this correctly, retinitis pigmentosa, and they've found him particularly inspiring. We've been talking, Sean, about how the casting of Strictly has been inspiring to so many people, but I imagine there'll be lots of people who are watching this at home finding your story of resilience really inspiring, because you've obviously really been through it. Is dancing something that has sort of, helped keep you going through all of those troubles? And what does it mean to you to see casting like this on a show like Strictly Come Dancing?
Like I say, all the things I went through. So those 9 years when I wasn't dancing, I was still dancing in my head and just banging on to other people. Very much not just people with sight loss. I've been a big advocate for people with social isolation. So many people on their own now, social anxiety, especially since COVID. And I just want people to get out. The stuff that I'm doing and all the stuff Chris is obviously doing, it will inspire others. Again, like I say, just not people just with sight loss. I had so many people come up to me in the early days, guys, and now that say, you know what, Shawnee, I've seen you do it, so I'm just going to do it. But you just got to get over yourself, because if you bother to do the maths, because all it is maths and walking. Yeah. That's all it is.
Maths and walking actually sounds quite difficult.
Sean, thank you.
Oh, come on, mate. Can you shout? Can you walk? Crack on.
Sean, you're an inspiration. Thank you, mate, for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. You're a star, and so glad.
Just before I go, I'm just going to say, this is Kev. Here's Kev.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
very good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 1. Or, if you're in Australia, it's just gone 10 minutes to the new year. But back here, closer to home, the Welsh Ambulance Service has declared a critical incident. Yes, things have got that bad that the Welsh Ambulance Service are now urging revellers to drink in moderation this evening to help reduce demand. Well, we're joined now by the health writer and commentator Roy Lilly. Roy, this is a pretty extraordinary story. If you're in Wales, you're not allowed to party quite so hard.
Well, that's stick to the lava bread, I suppose. Look, and actually in Wales, they make a very good whiskey called Penderyn as well. So I guess we've got to avoid that. Look, it's happening here as well. We've got 3 or 4 hospitals that have already declared these incidents. What it means is, in English, it means the hospitals are chock-a-block. It signals to other hospitals that you're chock-a-block and patients are likely to be diverted to your place. You cancel everything internally, all the, not there's much of it at this time of year, but all of the elective procedures like new hips and knees and all that kind of stuff, you stop doing that. You move all your staff to the front door and you try and deal with all the emergencies coming in, and you move heaven and earth to try and discharge people if you can. But of course, this time of the year, again, it's very difficult for social services. So it's a way of signalling to the rest of the service you're chock-a-block. The ambulance service will stop bringing you new patients, and you just try and dig your way out of a hole. They don't do it lightly. In my day, we used to have a sort of red, amber and green situation. You could do it, you sort of declare it yourself, and we hardly ever did it. But these days it's done with a consultation of NHS England and the regional directors. So, I mean, it's a big deal, and there will be more. And I tell you, you know, the worst is yet to come, because always just after Christmas and New Year, when people have been partying and with their families, and young people have been mixing with older people, we find the first 2 weeks of January are a nightmare, always.
Roy, this doesn't sound like we have a functional health system at all. If you're saying always we have, and we do always see these stories, these critical incidents, these beds in the corridors, people sleeping on chairs, and as you say, routine operations being cancelled just so staff can be diverted to emergencies. I mean, this is not a functioning healthcare system.
Well, we got a capacity issue. That's the problem. And it goes back a long way. I mean, in the years after the world banking crisis, we had 10 years of austerity funding. The NHS funding was under 2%, and it needs at least 3.5, 4 to just keep its head above water. So we didn't employ enough people, recruit enough people, train enough people, buy enough beds, kit, expand, repair. I mean, there's nearly £20 billion worth of buildings that need repairing. So it's been neglected, and the chickens are coming home to roost.
But Roy, I think a lot of people would say if your economy isn't growing at 4%, if your economy is only growing at 1%, you can't increase your health care services by 4 or 5% every year. There's just no money for it. It's a real intractable issue.
Historically, the historical uplift since the beginning in 1948, the historical uplift year on year is about 3.8%. Yeah. It has been done. The damaging
a lot easier to do when your economy is actually growing, because, of course, our economy at the moment, well, the last 2 months, it's been contracting. But, Roy, we are running to the end of the hour, but thank you so much for explaining what's going on in so many hospitals across the UK today. And a very happy New Year to you too. Drink in moderation. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's plenty more coming up, so don't go anywhere. Indeed, we're going to be live in Sydney in, what is it, just around 6 minutes' time. So stick with us for this firework display. That next.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the year, it is going to be unsettled, outbreaks of rain and also some snow and some strong winds too, with multiple Met Office warnings in force, so do keep an eye on those if you're out celebrating New Year's Eve tonight. And it's all because low pressure is taking hold, dragging in some frontal systems, bringing in a squeeze in the isobars, so some strong winds and some outbreaks of rain. This lingers around northern parts of Wales, northern parts of England through much of the afternoon. It generally mostly clears parts of Scotland, but plenty of blustery showers here and likely to see some disruption as a result of earlier rain across Scotland, where we have the amber warning issued. But across the far south and southeast, that's going to be the driest of the weather, but still plenty of cloud around, but largely mild across the south and southeast too. As we head into this evening, we'll still see longer spells of rain just to the north of Scotland, bringing in some snow across parts of Shetland, and fairly cloudy with some rain and drizzle to the south of this, similar across Northern Ireland too. And we'll continue to see those longer spells of rain across parts of Wales, northern and central parts of England. This could be heavy and rather persistent at times, and still staying largely dry across the far south and southeast. But as we head into the evening, it is going to remain unsettled. If you are out and about celebrating New Year's, still continuing to see outbreaks of rain across northern and central parts. Dry to the south, yes, but it is going to be fairly windy here, and we're going to see plenty of showers move through across Scotland, these falling as snow, mainly across hills but also to lower levels too, and it is going to start to feel particularly chilly across northern areas too. Remaining slightly mild to the south, but through the day we'll start to see outbreaks of rain slowly creep their way in here, and it will start to turn chillier once this clears through too, with a very brisk northerly flow starting to cross the country to the north of this rain band. So bringing in some wintry showers and feeling very chilly in the wind too. Still slightly milder to the south, but it will turn chillier through the course of the afternoon.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won $25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a time for the vegan community to get together, as well as an opportunity for non-vegans to try going plant-based.
Well, joining us now is some of her delicious hummus. We both love hummus. This is a great thing. This is the founder of Chickpea, Hannah McCollum. Hannah, lovely to meet you. And you've brought in some of your beautiful products in front of you here. So can you talk us through some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a range of chilled hummus, and then latest to the range of a new ambient snack pot, which is a fridgeless hummus that doesn't require refrigeration. But I started Chickpea because of my love for hummus, but also sustainability and reducing food waste and encouraging people to be more plant-based without saying go vegan.
Does normal, say, traditional hummus have anything that's not vegan appropriate in it?
Not really.
No.
I think
it's always chickpeas, olive oil, maybe some other bits.
Yeah, lemon juice, aquafibre or water to help with the consistency, garlic, and rapeseed oil or olive oil.
And there's a bit of a misconception about veganism that I hear a lot, where people say, "Look, I'm not a vegan. I love my steaks. I'll just get out of there now." But but there's a misconception that you don't get the protein, you don't get the fats, and you're kind of just eating processed salads and fake meat and things. But that's not quite the case, especially with chickpeas, right?
Yeah, I think protein is really important, and actually a lot of people think I need a certain amount of fish every week or meat, but actually a lot of the fish and meat that you're eating are eating higher protein foods, so algae, seaweed, pulses, all these types of plant-based foods. For me, veganism is like you could have a delicious rye seeded bread with just loads of roasted vegetables, seeds, tahini sauce on top.
That sounds
and there's nothing beige in there at all.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 31st of December. Or if you're in Australia, it's rapidly coming up to the 1st of January. Yes, I'm Tom Harwood and we're looking at live pictures here of Sydney Harbour Bridge, where the countdown has begun to the new year down under. We can see on the screen now that countdown on Sydney Harbour Bridge, where Sydney will be ringing in the new year. 2 hours ago, Auckland in New Zealand rang in the new year, so it's 2025 for the Kiwis already. But for the Aussies, it's coming in just 10 seconds time now. You can hear in the background that 10 countdown. Let's listen in to the Australian firework display. Well, there we have it, a marvellous display courtesy of the city of Sydney there, down under in Australia. A very happy 2025 to our Australian cousins down under. Well, not long now, indeed, only 11 hours until we see the same in London. Or perhaps, well, let's hope we have such miraculous fireworks here in London. There have been some warnings that the weather, not least the wind, could dampen the display in London. Let's hope that it all goes off without a hitch. But how are you celebrating? Do send in your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. What did you make of the Sydney fireworks? Well, we're going to be discussing much more about New Year, but also the big news driving the day. Yes, critical incidents across the NHS, New Year's honours and much more besides. But let's take a look at Sydney as those fireworks continue. Sydney. Happy New Year, Australia, ringing in 2025 with style. The fireworks that you've just been watching cost 6.3 million Australian dollars. That was 9 tonnes of fireworks being set off from iconic landmarks around Sydney, from Sydney Harbour Bridge to the Opera House to other buildings besides. And just before that firework display was a concert performance by Robbie Williams. So quite the big display there. Will London match it? Well, we've got less than 11 hours now to wait to see. But as we continue the countdown in Britain, other parts of the world have, of course, celebrated New Year already. New Zealand brought in 2025 around 2 hours ago. But, of course, we just watched those celebrations in Sydney. But as those parties are all going on down under, how might you be planning your own party back in good old Blighty? Well, who better to talk about throwing a party than party planner and etiquette expert Diana Mather. Diana, thanks for being with us here in the studio. First of all, before we get on to the particulars of parties, you were watching that fireworks display in Sydney. What did you make of it?
Well, it was amazing. I mean, Sydney's always been fantastic. I think that the first year we even sort of matched was when Boris was mayor, and we had a really, really good, and so also for the Olympic year, 2012. Amazing fireworks then. And I think that set the standard. But I doubt if we're spending as much or having as much tonnage as the Australians, because it's their thing, isn't it? And of course, they're the first ones, really.
Yes.
So it's broadcast around the world, so it gets us all definitely in the mood.
There are all of these sort of landmark points. We've just seen one of them in Sydney. I'm sure we'll all be looking at what happens, I don't know, perhaps in Dubai, perhaps next, and then London, and then New York, and it will sort of go across the world like that. But let's stay a little bit closer to home now, because there'll be many people planning parties around the country. Some might have had to change their plans last minute due to the pretty inclement weather.
Yes, I feel really sorry for people in Edinburgh, because as they say, people come from all over the world to witness not just the fireworks, but the Hogmanay, the streets, everything, the atmosphere. Hopefully some of that might be still around, but I suppose they just, if it really is high winds, you just can't risk people's lives, can you? I mean, it's a tough call. I wouldn't like to have to make it.
No, really tough call. And, of course, some parts of the country, not just high winds, but lots and lots of rain, which I suppose, if you're doing an outdoors party, really does put a dampener on things.
It does. So I think if you're planning an outdoor party, if you're planning a firework display, you've got to have a plan B. And that is, if it can't go forward, you can get little indoor fireworks, and you can make them, you know, providing they're safe, of course, then you can have your own little tiny display. But as long as you've got some lovely booze and lovely food, and it could either be a dinner party, which is what we did for many years, only about 12 of us having dinner, which was less stressful than an enormous party, or you may be having a big party. So as long as you've got enough food and enough drink. Although people aren't so hungry on New Year's Eve, because we've probably eaten a lot over Christmas.
Right.
So a buffet is quite less stressful than actually having hot food and a dinner party.
Less stressful, less food to buy as well, if we're all pinching purses after a big Christmas. That's interesting. So I imagine there are many, many New Year's parties across the country where there is just a lot of food left over by the end of the night.
Which is such a shame, and I don't know what we do with it, because you don't want to be eating turkey for 2 weeks. You know,
or indeed haggis.
Or indeed haggis. Actually, I love haggis. Yes, I must have. I usually have that on Baron's Late.
Yes, of course. A lot of overlap. So if there are these smaller parties, a dinner party, what would be the best traditional sort of food to have?
A lot of people have sort of beef on, or a goose on New Year's Day. Goose is pretty traditional, because it used to be the Christmas dinner goose, but now often people have it on New Year's Day. It doesn't feed as many people as turkey, which is why turkey's become the favourite. And really, if you're having a small dinner party, then find out what people like. If you've got vegans, vegetarians, you must provide something for them, obviously, but you've also got to feed the omnivores. So it's planning the menu a bit in advance, and also planning your guests. The other thing is, depending on how big your party is, make sure that everybody does get on. Because what we don't want when some drink is taken, is for people to have raging arguments and start off the new year in a very bad way.
What if, and this might be just me trying to sort of smooth over things, if you know that a couple of people don't get on or have had a bit of history, what if you stick one of them at one end of the table and the other at the other end of the table? Can you get away with doing that?
You can, and also you can say, we agreed not to talk about that this evening. It's New Year, let's start it off with peace, happiness and goodwill.
Fantastic. Well, let's bring in two people who have never had arguments at dinner party tables or at New Year parties. Ryan Mark Parsons is still with us, as well as Stephanie Tecci. Stephanie, what are your plans this New Year?
Well, I'm going to be hosting a dinner tonight, and then I'll be heading to a party after 12. So I wanted the balance of having a nice time at home, a nice dinner, quite intimate, but then I was thinking I really want to dance this year after 12. I think the older I've got, I've lost the sparkle for hitting the dance floor, so I'm going to have the mixture of the two.
And Ryan Mark?
I'm going to go to Parliament, so they've got a lovely terrace opposite the London Eye, so hopefully the fireworks are on full display, and then I'm going to a rave.
I was not expecting that. My goodness me. Wow, this is daytime television. No, fantastic stuff. So,
where is the rave and can we come?
Yes, and Diana, what is the etiquette for raving?
Yeah.
Well, try not to be sick.
Yes.
You know, try not to stamp on other people's toes. I mean, I think it just depends on the rave. What's your definition of rave?
Well, I mean, I barely remember them, to be honest with you, to give you a definition. But, yeah, usually I'm pretty black out. I mean, that's my definition of a good rave.
I suppose it's pretty hard to determine etiquette for that level. But let's turn to Stephanie's night. Diana, tips for Stephanie's dinner?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you've got it all prepared, haven't you? So that's lovely. And have you got your placement, where people are going to sit?
I do, actually. Yes. I've got about 8 people coming, so I've got all their names ready.
That's brilliant. So when you're having drinks beforehand, make sure that the people who are sitting together aren't chatting too long, because otherwise they've got nothing to say when they sit down for dinner. So you just move people around a bit. Do they all know each other well?
Yes, they do.
Yes, so in that case, it's going to be a really nice, cosy evening. And I'm sure, don't forget anything in the oven, which I tend to do, and I'm having a nice drink and think, oh, my God, what's that smell? So, I mean, just time everything. Put your watch on if you've got something that's going to be done at the last minute.
And what about when it hits 12 o'clock? Do you have to do all the kissy, huggy?
Well, I do.
Sometimes I find that a bit awkward having to kiss everybody.
If you don't want to, you raise your glass and say, here's the coming year, here's the great, good time for all of us. Wishing you all a wonderful new year. Raising your glass stops the kissing.
Thank goodness. It's always such a stressful moment because you don't. There are some people you'd rather kiss, some people you wouldn't. You don't want to be the person to make the move if it's not reciprocated. You don't want to force it. You don't want to sort of dangle bits of foliage above people's heads and start looking very forceful. It's all a nightmare. But Diana, what I tend to do is Auld Lang Syne. Now,
yes, that's lovely.
I know at least the first stanza, and then everyone sort of starts to mumble. But
again, that stops the kissing. That stops the kissing. So you see, it's up to the hostess to you raise your glass if you don't want to kiss, and then they will follow. If it's like me, I go around kissing everybody, so they have to kiss me whether they like it or not. But no, Auld Lang Syne is brilliant. Do you cross hands?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I can't do it without.
Absolutely.
Yes,
no, that's great.
Diana, I must ask, how are you spending your New Year?
Well, actually, Ian and I are spending it quite quietly this year. We're going to have a nice dinner, and before the dinner, we're going to go to a few pubs.
Oh, very nice.
And a little bit of a pub crawl. I hope it doesn't end up as a crawl. And then we're going to have dinner and probably watch more fireworks and toast each other, because normally I go to big parties or big gatherings, and this year we decided we'd just have it on our own.
Yes, no, sometimes it's much nicer, especially when the weather is like it is. A good excuse to stay in, have it quiet, and watch GB News.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, Diana Mather, thank you so much for your expertise and talking us through what I'm sure will be a very, very happy New Year. Now, you can join the ultimate countdown to 2025 here on GB News with Patrick, Bev, Emily, Darren and Ben all together for a very special show tonight. Is live from 10 p.m. Don't miss it. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and we're going to be keeping you company right through until 3 o'clock, and there's plenty more to come. Indeed, find out what Nigel Farage has had to say in his rather grand, almost regal New Year's message. That next.
headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, like, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer has to should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset.
There was a bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out. Because
exactly. They had turfs on the.
Turfs. Yeah. GB News, the People's Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 25 minutes past 1. And, of course, it's New Year's Eve. So we're going to turn to a New Year's message. Yes, one Nigel Farage has released a New Year's message with a rather regal feeling to it. Take a look at this.
Well, I'm fortunate today to be giving you this New Year's message from Denim Palace. Not only a magnificent place and a wonderful place to come and visit, but, of course, the birthplace of Winston Churchill, who represented something when this country was indeed a great country, not just in terms of looking after its own people, but in standing up for the right things in the world.
Well, there was Nigel Farage in Denim Palace, of all places. Well, what did you make of that? Let's discuss it with the columnist for the Daily Express, Leo McKinstry. Leo, thanks so much for being with us on New Year's Eve of all times. Nigel Farage in Denim Palace. Did you see that crossover coming?
I didn't know, but I think it's very appropriate because Nigel Farage is probably the greatest warrior for British freedom and Britain's heritage since Winston Churchill. Because Churchill's finest hour came in 1940. When Britain stood alone against Nazi tyranny. And through his brilliant oratory and his galvanizing the nation, he ultimately saved Britain and the whole world from the Third Reich. And Nigel Farage has had a fantastic year in 2024. He's shaken up British politics. He's become an MP for the first time. And he's really motoring now. I mean, if you look at what Kemi Badenoch, the new Tory leader, has been saying she's totally flummoxed by Farage, and this row, spat she's got into over the membership figures is playing right into his hands and emphasising that he's the new force. And I think Nigel Farage looked so confident to camera in that message from Blenheim Palace because he's got a great year ahead of him. The county council elections, I think, in May are going to show Reform as a formidable force in British politics. And already the opinion polls Reform neck and neck with Labour and the Conservatives, and I think they're just going to improve their standing, particularly because immigration, which is something that Nigel Farage has campaigned on so vigorously for years, is spiralling out of control.
But Leo, I mean, this is Nigel Farage, self-styled man of the people, not in a working men's club, not in a pub, not in Clacton, but in a palace that was built to rival Versailles, in the seat of the British establishment, surrounded by all sorts of gilded trinkets. I mean, is this really the setting for a man of the people?
Well, Nigel Farage, who I know quite well, he's a great guy, and he's able to connect to so many different people on so many different levels. As you say, he can be the guy with a pint down the pub in Clacton, or I lived in Margate, and I remember at the start of the Brexit campaign, he came to the Winter Gardens in Margate, and he had a tremendous rapport with the people here in Thanet. So, in a way, it just emphasises that he can have such a deep, widespread appeal that he can use Blenheim Palace as a backdrop, and it doesn't look absurd precisely because of you say he has this connection with Winston Churchill in protecting British interests and British identity. But
now we mentioned British identity and British interests. There have been new papers released under one of these government rules that old papers are released after several decades about what Tony Blair was up to, and particularly around how new migration waves were managed during his time as Prime Minister. What have we learned in these document releases?
Well, this is going to put rocket fuel under the Reform Party. And it just shows how badly the British people have been betrayed. Tony Blair is often presented as a moderate, a centrist, but in fact he presided over the greatest, darkest social revolution in modern British history without any mandate. He opened the floodgates to mass migration, and this, one of the landmarks on the road to the massive change in British society was in 2004. The EU accession states were given the right, people from those states were given the right to settle in Britain without any restriction. And there was a debate within the Labour government at the time, as these papers showed, whether they should have restrictions or not. And Jack Straw, who I've always admired and thought was a very sensible Labour statesman, he argued strongly that we should have more restrictions. David Blunkett persuaded Tony Blair. David Blunkett was the Home Secretary at the time, according to these papers. He persuaded Tony Blair to that free for all, unlike the other European states who did have transitional arrangement. Britain just let the floodgates open, and that was the start of the revolution that has changed the fabric of our
Leo,
society
you say Tony Blair had no mandate for this. Of course, he did win 3 elections. One of those elections was after those accession countries joined in 2004. Tony Blair won 1997, 2001 and 2005.
Yes, but if you look at the Labour manifestos in 2001 and 1997, Labour actually talked about having tough immigration controls. And they say that every government, every democratic government in the Western world has put some form of immigration restrictions. And he didn't stick with that promise. And that's so indicative of what has happened in modern Britain. The politicians have betrayed the British people. They constantly talk about crackdowns. The Tories famously said they would get immigration below 6 figures And they've just done the opposite. The Tories have pushed immigration over a net figure of over 900,000. And it looks like under Keir Starmer, Jill Reeves and Yvette Cooper, the figures are going to go even higher.
Well, we'll keep an eye
Keir
on
Starmer
those
was
numbers.
promising.
They'll be absolutely incisive, no doubt, for the future electoral events. But Leo McKinstry, columnist at the Daily Express, really appreciate your time with us on Good Afternoon Britain this afternoon.
I just apologise for moving around so much on the camera.
Oh, no, don't worry at all. Don't worry at all.
I've got Parkinson's. I know it's slightly off-putting for people. Any viewers at home were wondering.
Leo, I know everyone will understand. Thank you so much for being with us here. We really appreciate your time and your knowledge and your thoughts. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, with 2025 just around the corner, today at GB News, we're saying a big thank you. We're saying a thank you to our viewers and sending this special message.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more coming on today's show, including the all-important weather. Indeed, we're going to be taking a deep dive into where in the country you should, frankly, stay indoors and what this could mean for your New Year's party. All that to come after the news update with Sophia Wensler.
Tom, thank you. Your headlines at 1:34. New Zealand has been the first to usher in the new year with a firework display in Auckland, closely followed by Australia, who within the last half hour have celebrated with fireworks in Sydney. But as the world prepares to welcome in 2025, severe weather is set to hamper Britain's New Year's events. The Edinburgh Hogmanay celebrations have been cancelled due to weather conditions. The Met Office have issued amber weather warnings as snow, gales and up to 5 inches of rain are set to batter the UK this New Year's Eve. 2 fireworks displays planned for 6 p.m. and midnight on Newcastle's quayside have been cancelled because of the weather, while Blackpool and North Yorkshire are also reporting cancellations. Meanwhile, City Hall in London says they are monitoring weather conditions ahead of the capital's annual New Year's fireworks display this evening. Former England football manager Gareth Southgate, actor Stephen Fry and gardener Alan Titchmarsh are among some of the famous names included on this year's New Year's honours list. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has also been knighted, sparking fury among some amid London's spiralling crime rate. Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of rewarding failure as knife crime has increased in the capital by 50% since Khan took office in 2016. The Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, said Londoners would be furious. The London Mayor was also responsible for rolling out the controversial ULEZ scheme in Greater London, which critics say hit the poorest workers the hardest. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Sir Sadiq said he was truly humbled to receive the honour. Nigel Farage has delivered his New Year message from Blenheim Palace, the birthplace of Sir Winston Churchill. In his message to the nation, he speaks about why he jumped back into the political arena, becoming a grandfather, the optimism he has for the country and his belief that Reform UK can make Britain great again. But he fears we've been let down by previous governments for decades.
You know, the fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of.
And Wayne Rooney has left his job as head coach of Championship strugglers Plymouth Argyle. Rooney and Plymouth have mutually agreed to part ways with immediate effect after a 9-game winless run. The 39-year-old former England captain oversaw just 4 league wins and suffered 13 defeats in 23 championship games after taking charge of the Pilgrims in May. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2531 and €1.2061. The price of gold is £2,079 and 80 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,173 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the year, it is going to be unsettled, outbreaks of rain and also some snow and some strong winds too, with multiple Met Office warnings in force, so do keep an eye on those if you're out celebrating New Year's Eve tonight. And it's all because low pressure is taking hold, dragging in some frontal systems, bringing in a squeeze in the isobars, so some strong winds and some outbreaks of rain. This lingers around northern parts of Wales, northern parts of England through much of the afternoon. It generally clears parts of Scotland, but plenty of blustery showers here and likely to see some disruption as a result of earlier rain across Scotland, where we have the amber warning issued. But across the far south and southeast, that's going to be the driest of the weather, but still plenty of cloud around, but largely mild across the south and southeast too. As we head into this evening, we'll still see longer spells of rain just to the north of Scotland, bringing in some snow across parts of Shetland and fairly cloudy with some rain and drizzle to the south of this, similar across Northern Ireland too. And we'll continue to see those longer spells of rain across parts of Wales, northern and central parts of England. This could be heavy and rather persistent at times and still staying largely dry across the far south and southeast. But as we head into the evening, it is going to remain unsettled if you are out and about celebrating New Year's. Still continuing to see outbreaks of rain across northern and central parts. Dry to the south, yes, but it is going to be fairly windy here. And we're going to see plenty of showers move through across Scotland. These falling as snow, mainly across hills, but also to lower levels too. And it is going to start to feel particularly chilly across northern areas too. Remaining slightly mild to the south, but through the day we'll start to see outbreaks of rain slowly creep their way in here. And it will start to turn chillier once this clears through too, with a very brisk northerly flow starting to cross the country to the north of this rain band. So bringing in some wintry showers and feeling very chilly in the wind too. Still slightly milder to the south, but it will turn chillier through the course of the afternoon.
The latest GB News travel.
I'm John Vincent. In the Highland, the A832 is closed in both directions for a landslip between Fortrose and Avoch. Queues on the M6 northbound in Cheshire. Lanes 1 and 2 are closed for an overturned lorry if you're travelling northbound between junction 17 Sandbach towards junction 18 Middlewich. In London, in Rainham, the A1306 New Road is closed in both directions between Asquith Road and Manor Way as a result of a building fire. On the A66 in Scotch Corner, it's currently closed in both directions to high-sided vehicles between Scotch Corner and junction 40 of the M6 at Penrith, and it's also closed to high-sided vehicles due to strong winds on the Redgeoff Bridge between Gateshead and Newcastle. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 42 minutes past 1, and it's a bit of a chilly, windy, and in some places very rainy day, and indeed night. Yes, the Edinburgh Hogmanay celebrations have been cancelled due to severe weather conditions. The Met Office have issued amber weather alerts as snow, gales, and up to 5 inches of rain are set to batter Britain this new year. So is it right to cancel much of this much-loved celebration? In Edinburgh, in Blackpool and in other parts of the UK too? Well, joining us now is the operational meteorologist at the Met Office, Honor Criswick. Honor, thanks so much for joining us. We've seen you doing the formal weather at the top of each hour this afternoon, so it's great to speak to you in person. Where is going to be worst hit tonight?
Well, to be honest, across the country, there's a few different zones of weather. So across Scotland, for example, where we do have the amber warning issued, that's valid up until 5 p.m. this evening. They're going to get some outbreaks of rain, some showery rain, and also some outbreaks of snow too. But just slightly further south of this, so across Wales, northern parts of England, they're the ones being battered by the heavy outbreaks of rain. This is quite persistent at times too. And then across the south, we're likely to see some quite strong winds, and then we'll eventually see those outbreaks of rain through tomorrow morning too. So it's across much of the country that is going to see quite an unsettled spell of weather, but depending on whereabouts you are, depends on what kind of weather you're going to see.
Generally, is the sort of picture that I'm gathering, the further north you go, the more hairy it gets?
Yeah, in terms of showers and snow, risk of ice as well overnight. I know it's going to be quite a blustery evening for all, I'm afraid. So yeah, further north across parts of Scotland, northern parts of England, likely to see some snow showers.
Oh, I'm sorry, we've just lost your audio there, Honor. Let's see if we can get it back. But snow showers, well, it could be a nightmare for some travelling, or it could be a rather magical new year to bring in 2025 with snow. My panel are still with me here in the studio, Ryan Mark Parsons and Stephanie Tecci. Ryan Mark, how would you feel bringing in 2025 in a blizzard?
Well, as long as I have champagne, I don't really care about the weather.
That is the most Ryan Mark answer I think I've ever heard on GB News. That's fantastic. Stephanie, what do you make of it?
Well, I think Brits were used to having bad weather and the doom and gloom all year round, but I guess it is safety first, and we want to bring the new year in safely. But I still wish that they could maintain the spirit of the joy of the new year somehow, some way.
I know. It does seem strange, Ryan Mark, that to some extent, we take a look at Blackpool. They've cancelled the fireworks, but they're keeping other elements of the celebration. So they're still expecting people to come out in large numbers, but not sending the fire. I mean, is it that bad if fireworks get blown off course?
Yeah,
am I being facetious here?
No, I don't. I'm the same. I don't really get it. I mean, you go to these events for the fireworks. That's the USP. Yeah. So I don't know what they're going to be offering instead. But if there's no fireworks, I wouldn't be going.
No, well, you might as well stay inside and watch the GB News New Year's special. Stephanie,
much more warmer.
I suppose people have taken health and safety advice, and we shouldn't be glib about it. But it does seem that maybe we've become a bit more health and safety conscious than we were a decade or two ago.
I think we have become that because if it goes wrong, it will go horribly wrong, and the media will have a field day. And I think as well, no council wants to take that risk of being the council who got it all wrong on New Year's Eve, and then it goes explosive, no pun intended, due to these fireworks. But I guess it's one of those things, we do have that community spirit and people will still turn up, but it's a shame.
It is a shame, and of course there will be many people setting off fireworks in their own gardens, having their own parties too. Ryan Mark, you're going to be watching what we hope is going to be a very spectacular firework display on the banks of the Thames.
Yes, I'm going to be in Parliament, so I have a direct view of the London Eye, which I'm looking forward to seeing, if there are fireworks. But if not, I'm off to a rave, and about 1 a.m.
Is this an indoor and an outdoor rave? This is what I don't know, actually.
I don't know. My friend's guiding me somewhere, but
goodness me,
where I'm going.
Well, there we go. Well, Ryan Mark and Stephanie Tecci, thanks so much for talking through what hopefully will not be too dreadful a weather forecast for the whole country. Let's hope that we can all enjoy safely and without too much of a downpour. But you can join the GB News ultimate countdown to 2025 indoors safely with Patrick, Bev, Emily, Darren and Ben all together for a very special show. GB News New Year's Live from 10 o'clock this very evening. Don't miss it. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come. Indeed, it's been 25 years since the Y2K bug was going to end the world. Do you remember this? Planes were going to fall out of the sky. Our computers were going to explode. The world was going to end. and then it didn't. That next.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
What about train Wi-Fi? The Times. It's so funny. The Times did this story because I was on the train yesterday trying to do some work and connecting to the Wi-Fi, and it happens all the time. It just doesn't work. It's pathetic. And then I opened the Times, and they've done a massive investigation. Loads of different rail routes from north to south.
Was that the James Bond thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. What's
that passenger got through, or almost got through, one episode of one James Bond movie in 8 hours.
But you know, it's interesting. We call it train Wi-Fi, but it isn't. It's just really a SIM card on a train, really. So if your own phone's not going to get signal, why would we assume that the train's going to have signal? It just doesn't work like that. Unless you're in Japan or South Korea, whose infrastructure is infinitely better than ours, you're just not going to get signal. You have to download those films way before you get on
There is technology that can help with that. You know, there really is. If they found ways to put it underground, they can get it on ground and get you going. I definitely think, you know, with the price that we're paying for these tickets, they can get the Wi-Fi going. There is technology.
That's why it's so frustrating, isn't
Call
it?
Elon, get a Starlink, let's go.
If you're a passenger paying hundreds of pounds for a season ticket or whatever you call it, and, you know, commute to work every single day, and you're paying all this money, and you can't.
It's so expensive. You'd expect Wi-Fi at the basic. Yeah, exactly.
But it happens with phone signal as well. I'll be walking down London in Park Lane or somewhere else, or down on the south coast. I just don't have phone signal, and I think to myself, what on earth is going on?
Doesn't it feel like 5G's made it worse, though?
Yeah.
Because I feel like 4G, that didn't happen so much, but 5G just feels like...
Yeah, and then I always get this little E in the top corner of my phone, and I don't get any signal. I think it's got worse over the past couple of years. Yeah, especially with 5G. I agree with that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
Good afternoon, Britain. Happy New Year. It's 10 to 2. And let's talk about Y2K. Yes, we can all laugh about it now, but 25 years ago today, there was very real concern that Y2K millennium bug, commonly known, of course, as the millennium bug, was going to cause a global pandemonium. Well, there were hysterical predictions about planes falling out of the sky, nuclear reactors exploding. But thankfully, we all lived to tell the tale. Let's reminisce now with my panel, the broadcaster and journalist Ryan Mark Parsons and the showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci. Stephanie, Y2K, I mean, it all does seem ridiculous.
It really does, but I think the world has always been obsessed about the world ending, the apocalypse, technology crashing, and I think when you look back to Y2K back then, there was that fear of the unknown, but I think it was all hysteria, which just added on top of more hysteria. But it's quite interesting to see 25 years later how our relationship technology, if not more than it was back then.
Absolutely. And Ryan Mark, what I find very interesting is that generally you talk to people about Y2K and half of them will say, thank goodness we spent billions of pounds across the world over updating our computer software, making sure nothing happened. Aren't we very clever? We solved the issue. And the other half, you say, you wasted billions of pounds the world over. You didn't need to do any of that. It was all fine. Which camp are you in?
Well, I mean, I wasn't even born when this all happened. Oh, no!
Oh, wow.
I was born in April 2000, so I missed all of this, but I can't really reminisce, and, you know, it's not really nostalgic for me. But, yes, it does seem overhyped, probably driven by media hysteria. But we saw this back in July when we had the global IT outage that affected planes and healthcare, and we had planes literally grounded, and it just really shows this absolute dependence now on technology, which is worrying when it affects so much.
Of course, it all does seem very silly when we sort of think about, well, all of the clocks and all of the internal timekeeping and all of the different software that was used. It only had 4 digits, and if it was going to click over to the next digit, it would think it was year 0 or something. I mean, it does sound silly, but Stephanie, are we in the media to some extent to blame here? We love a doomsday scenario, and any nerd who comes on and said this is a possibility, are we just going to fan the flames?
Well, I think we are, but as well, we are saying what a section of the population are thinking, fearing that it could all go wrong. Well, back then, there was that genuine fear that actually there's going to be this technology big disruption, and I think there is always that fear that we live with. I think secretly, whether if it's not in the media, subconsciously, we're always thinking, what if it all goes wrong with technology? What if it stops working? This world will stop working.
Yeah, no, it is remarkable to think just how reliant we are on all of the technology that we use today. I mean, it's pretty hard to get through a day without using some bit of technology or other.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at my screen time the other day. It was like 20 hours. I mean, it's like shocking. Most of that's TikTok as well. I mean, it's just shocking how much time you now spend on your phone and other devices. I think people should start reading books. You know, let's go back to the abacus and books. And
Although I have to say, when books became popular, people were worried about, you know, people spending too much time staring at a little thing. We're going to have got much more to come on Good Afternoon Britain. Don't go anywhere. Sadiq Khan has a knighthood. Did you hear?
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the year, it is going to be unsettled, outbreaks of rain and also some snow and some strong winds too, with multiple Met Office warnings in force, so do keep an eye on those if you're out celebrating New Year's Eve tonight. And it's all because low pressure is taking hold, dragging in some frontal systems, bringing in a squeeze in the isobars, so some strong winds and some outbreaks of rain. This lingers around northern parts of Wales, northern parts of England through much of the afternoon. It generally clears parts of Scotland, but plenty of blustery showers here and likely to see some disruption as a result of earlier rain across Scotland, where we have the amber warning issued. But across the far south and southeast, that's going to be the driest of the weather, but still plenty of cloud around, but largely mild across the south and southeast too. As we head into this evening, we'll still see longer spells of rain just to the north of Scotland, bringing in some snow across parts of Shetland, and fairly cloudy with some rain and drizzle to the south of this, similar across Northern Ireland too. And we'll continue to see those longer spells of rain across parts of Wales, northern and central parts of England. This could be heavy and rather persistent at times, and still staying largely dry across the far south and southeast. But as we head into the evening, it is going to remain unsettled if you are out and about celebrating New Year's. Still continuing to see outbreaks of rain across northern and central parts. Dry to the south, yes, but it is going to be fairly windy here, and we're going to see plenty of showers move through across Scotland. These falling as snow, mainly across hills, but also to lower levels too, and it is going to start to feel particularly chilly across northern areas too. Remaining slightly mild to the south, but through the day we'll start to see outbreaks of rain slowly creep their way in here, and it will start to turn chillier once this clears through too, with a very brisk northerly flow starting to cross the country to the north of this rain band. So bringing in some wintry showers and feeling very chilly in the wind too. Still slightly milder to the south, but it will turn chillier through the course of the afternoon.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever.
an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And the latest series of Big Brother has just wrapped up, and as always, the housemates managed to cause a stir.
Yeah, that's an understatement. After 5 weeks of drama and twists and turns, 6 housemates were left to battle it out for a £90,000 prize.
Well, our next guest was there to the bitter end, coming third in this year's competition.
6 weeks you were in there.
Oh, I tell you what, it was a long time.
What goes through your mind? Is it, do you start to go a bit sort of, what do they call it, cabin fever?
Yeah.
Do you go a bit nutty?
Like, at times, not that I've ever been in prison, but I kind of likened it to being in jail, particularly when we were having to eat the porridge with water, no sugar, or, you know, that was difficult. And the feeling that you just can't leave. I mean, you can, but... You know, it was,
You can,
tough.
but you won't get your hands on that prize money.
No, exactly.
You made it to the end.
Yeah.
And it's quite a big house, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you feel as though you can get away from housemates if they're annoying you a bit, or does it feel like your hot house with
no,
people you don't like very much?
If you're sort of, you know, if you're not comfortable with a certain conversation or something like that, you can always take yourself and move away. But can you have time to yourself? No. Not really. I mean, even you might think, do you know what, I'll just go and lock myself in the toilet for a few minutes. There's a camera and there's a mic in there, so you can't escape that. And then you're obviously wearing a mic, so there is that little feeling of, you know, I could just do with having 5 minutes to myself, but you can't really get it.
You've met up with one side of the house, but not the other side yet. But is that still on the cards, do you think?
I hope so, yeah, because I liked every single person in that house, despite a few whispers on the internet, you know, like, do you not like this? I liked everybody in the house, never had a bad word with anybody, so...
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 31st of December. Or Wednesday, the 1st of January, if you're in New Zealand or Australia. My name's Tom Harwood. Now, arise, Sir Sadiq Khan. Yes, fury has erupted as the Prime Minister is accused of rewarding failure, handing a knighthood to the London mayor who presided over surging knife crime and several undelivered promises in the capital. Elsewhere, the former head of UK Border Force suggests that the UK government will never solve the small boat crisis unless it brings in an effective deterrent. This as the number crossing the English Channel reaches nearly 37,000 this year alone. And 2025 has officially started down under, with Australia bringing in the new year with a stunning firework display, 9 tonnes of fireworks, almost 7 million Australia dollars worth. But across the UK, firework displays may well be cancelled, including Edinburgh's annual Hogmanay Street Party, cancelled due to severe weather conditions. Well, it was an hour ago that we saw the new year be rung in style from Sydney, Australia. Fireworks emanating from the Sydney Harbour Bridge, Sydney Opera House and all those famous landmarks. They really do it well down under. Well, we'll be looking ahead to what London might have to offer as it spearheads the UK's celebrations in just 10 hours' time. But will it all go ahead without a hitch? Of course, as we've been hearing, across the UK, several firework displays have already been cancelled thanks to the strong winds, rain and even some snowy situations, particularly if we head further north. What's it like where you are? Please do send in your views, post your comments by visiting us at gbnews.com/your say. But of course, Good Afternoon Britain is all about you. It's all about New Year today, but there's more news besides. We'll be looking at some of the political stories leading the day, some New Year's messages from Nigel Farage, those honours, of course, that we saw bestowed on many politicians, and, of course, a crisis in our pubs. Yes, we'll be looking forward to that later in the programme. Or should I say not looking forward to it? We like our pubs. Well, do join in, and all of that's to come after your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 2 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. New Zealand has been the first to usher in the new year with a firework display in Auckland, closely followed by Australia, who within the last hour have celebrated with fireworks in Sydney. But as the world prepares to welcome in 2025, severe weather is set to hamper Britain's New Year's events. The Edinburgh Hogmanay celebrations have been cancelled due to severe weather conditions. The Met Office have issued amber weather warnings as snow, gales and up to 5 inches of rain are set to batter Britain this New Year's Eve. 2 fireworks displays planned for 6 p.m. and midnight on Newcastle's quayside have now been cancelled because of the weather, while Blackpool and North Yorkshire are also reporting cancellations. Meanwhile, City Hall in London says they are monitoring weather conditions ahead of the capital's annual New Year's Eve fireworks display this evening. Former England football manager Gareth Southgate, actor Stephen Fry and gardener Alan Titchmarsh are among some of the famous names included on this year's honours list. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has also been knighted, sparking fury among some amid London's spiralling crime rate. Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of rewarding failure as knife crime has increased in the capital by 50% since Khan took office in 2016. The Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, said Londoners would be furious. The London Mayor was also responsible for rolling out the controversial ULEZ scheme in Greater London, which critics say hit the poorest workers the hardest. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Sir Sadiq said he was truly humbled to receive the honour. Nigel Farage has delivered his New Year message from Blenheim Palace, the birthplace of Sir Winston Churchill. In his message to the nation, he speaks about why he jumped back into the political arena, becoming a grandfather, the optimism he has for the country, and his belief that Reform UK can make Britain great again. But he fears we've been let down by previous governments for decades.
You know, the fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of.
Now, Tony Blair's Labour government pushed on with plans to open UK's borders to Eastern Europe, despite mounting concerns from senior ministers. That's according to newly released official files. The National Archives has published Cabinet Office files from 2003 to 2004, when Tony Blair was Prime Minister. The documents revealed the issue of immigration was top of the agenda, with senior ministers urging the then Prime Minister to delay granting employment rights to Eastern and Central European workers when the EU expanded in 2004. But Mr Blair's government went ahead with plans despite the warnings. The government will never solve the small boats crisis unless it brings in an effective deterrent, GB News has been told. The former head of the UK Border Force says efforts by Sir Keir Starmer to smash the gangs cannot succeed through law enforcement alone. It comes as the number of illegal migrants who crossed the Channel this year reached nearly 37,000. That's 25% higher than last year's total. Tony Smith told us that more needs to be done to put an end to the crisis.
What I haven't seen is a real deterrent. The only real change we've seen from this government is the abolition of the Rwanda scheme, which would have said to people, look, I'm sorry, we're not going to consider your asylum application or your human rights application in this country. You can go to Rwanda for that. I thought that was the boldest attempt since Australia to try and set up an interdiction policy, which would have been a deterrent and would have made people perhaps who are already in a safe country think twice about making that perilous journey.
And teenage girls in the UK are more likely to get repeatedly drunk than their peers from almost anywhere else in Europe. That's according to a new study. Research by the OECD, cited in the Times newspaper, shows only those in Hungary and Denmark outdrink British girls. The OECD report said that historically teenage boys drank more than girls, but the reverse was now true in 12 European countries. Experts say it could be down to a cultural shift. It is also thought that teenage girls are mirroring their parents, as UK women binge drink more than their counterparts on the continent. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 8 minutes past 2. We're counting down, of course, to New Year's. You can see the little clock in the corner if you're watching on television. Isn't that neat? Well, there we go. I'm going to return to the news now, because it's not all jollity and New Year's stuff here at GB News today. That much more later. Yes, fury has erupted after the London Mayor Sadiq Khan was knighted in the King's New Year's honours list. Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of rewarding failure. Knife crime, of course, has increased in the capital by 50% since Sadiq Khan took office back in 2016. Well, the London Mayor was also responsible for rolling out the controversial ULEZ scheme in Greater London. Critics say it hit the poorest the hardest, although Sadiq Khan defends it, saying it increased air quality. This all comes as the newly appointed Knight of the Realm says he was truly humbled to receive the honour. Well, we're joined now by the political correspondent for The Spectator, James Heal. James, we're going to start with this honour for Sadiq Khan. It seems a bit of an interesting move, given that this is a serving politician. This is normally something that's given to someone at the end of their career.
Yes, Tom, but I think that if you look at the recent record of Conservative governments on this, they're the ones who really don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to honours. I think at the end of the last Parliament, there was only one Tory MP elected before 1997 who wasn't given a knighthood. And so I think it comes to Sadiq Khan, just recently re-elected for a historic third term as Mayor of London. There are, I think, sensible grounds on which to award it in one sense. The more interesting question, perhaps, is why Sir Sadiq has now accepted this honour, given, of course, post-2020 he has been so critical about British history, about elements of past involving empire and themes around colonialism, has been such a keen decoloniser. Why would he accept to become a Knight of the British Empire? That's the more interesting question, I think, this afternoon.
That is a fascinating question. Perhaps he would have rejected an OBE or an MBE and only took the K, as I think the lingo is amongst those who get bestowed with this honour. But of course, he's not the only one. There's also Emily Thornberry, and this I found fascinating, given that Emily Thornberry was in effect sacked by Sir Keir Starmer just 6 months ago.
Yes, bumped off as the Labour choice for Attorney General, replaced at the last minute on election day by Richard Herman, who was ennobled as Attorney General. And you have to think, yeah, that looks more like a consolation prize, really. Dame Emily Thornberry getting that gong. It's a bit too late for the pantomime. But really, this is about the trend of both political parties honouring those who serve their ranks, whether they deserve it or not. Now, some of these awards, I think, are really well justified. Nick Gibb, of course, you'll know, Tom, huge amount, helped thousands of British school children with his work in education over the past 10 years. Really well deserving. He was a junior minister in education. Others, I think, perhaps are really not the ones that we think of when we think it should be our best and brightest getting the gongs today.
No, certainly a lot of controversy. But of course, it used to be that around this time every single year, papers around the country, campaigners, even some politicians were asking one question, one name that never appeared on any of these lists of gongs, whether it was for a place in the House of Lords or a knighthood or even an OBE. And that's Nigel Farage. And he's taken the news by storm today for another reason. He, of course, hasn't been given an honour, but he has delivered a New Year's message. Let's take a quick look.
Well, I'm fortunate today to be giving you this New Year's message from Denim Palace. Not only a magnificent place and a wonderful place to come and visit, but, of course, the birthplace of Winston Churchill, who represented something when this country was indeed a great country, not just in terms of looking after its own people, but in standing up for the right things in the world.
Oh, I mean, this is pretty much the grandest New Year's message I've seen a party leader ever perform. I mean, it looked almost regal. And there we go. Oh, no, sorry, you disappeared for a second, James. You're back with us. Do carry on.
OK. And well, of course, Denim Palace is the only non-royal, non-episcopal palace in the whole of the country, and most famously was the birthplace of Winston Churchill. So the reason why Nigel Farage has chosen to do it there is obvious. You know, this is him trying to associate himself with Churchill's legacy. This is him talking about when Britain really was great. And it's an interesting question, of course, is, you know, why was he filming there? And the answer would appear to be that he is a great friend of the Duke of Marlborough, who spoke back in, I think, June about his support for reform. The Telegraph reported that he's endorsed him on his private social media accounts, etc. And that's probably how Farage got the chance to speak there. But it was a very grand moment. And I think Reform insiders are pointing to the fact that he was making this speech without an auto cue, unlike most of our politicians who sort of very rigid, as we'll know from all those speeches. And he gave this sort of 6-minute address. And I think it shows really how politics can change in the last 12 months. 12 months ago, January 24, he was there coming fresh out the jungle, becoming a grandfather for the first time. I was at his 60th in April. He was sort of looking back, what would you do next? And now, of course, in the House of Commons, best mate in the White House. It's fascinating to see what he does in 2025, Tom.
Absolutely fascinating. There will be those, however, who say, hang on, isn't this man supposed to be a man of the people? Shouldn't he have made this speech from a working men's club in Clacton?
There will be those who say that. I think, though, that as we've seen with Boris Johnson beforehand, and there's a great tradition of people, you know, being able to unite the so-called upper classes with the working class, you know, tradition of popular Toryism. And I think Farage very much sees himself as being able to talk to all sides. That's why he feels absolutely no compunction in going out on Boxing Day, meeting the hunt, as it were, while also going to those working men's clubs in Clacton. I think the key thing, of course, is Farage is, you know, trying to embrace the history there. The key thing is not to ensure it goes too much to his head. And you can think of one or two politicians who perhaps enjoy the grandeur of office sometimes. I think for Farage, he will be very aware that he has to make sure he's continuing to deliver his constituents, as well as enjoying some of the historic homes of people who support him.
Absolutely, but I suppose what marvellous homes they are too. I just like looking at pretty buildings generally, and so the more of them in New Year's messages, well, I'm happy for that. James Hill, thanks so much for joining us here on GB News this afternoon. Appreciate your time. Well, let's get more on these honours now, because there has been some controversy, particularly around the political honours that have been given. Delighted to be joined now by the journalist Ella Whelan. And Ella, you've been looking particularly at Sadiq Khan and Emily Thornberry, perhaps for what they represent.
Yes. So I wrote an article for the Telegraph today in the paper, which sort of asked the question of why these two. When you think of, you know, both Emily Thornberry and Sadiq Khan, very much conjure up the kind of metropolitan class stereotype that Labour has been unwilling and unable to shake off. You know, Thornberry is sort of most famous for two things: not knowing the French Foreign Secretary's name and the tweet about the flag in Rochester, which she sort of, you know, was disgusted by somebody in a less than 5-story house displaying the national flag. So there's they're two anti-Brexit, very pro net zero, you know, very much of that kind of political ilk. Not big fans of populism, not big fans of Brexit, all the rest of it. And so I think it just reveals the depth to which Labour has shifted in its position. It never really, to my mind, was a party of the labouring classes. It never really spoke to working class interests, certainly not for a very, very, very long time. But that's completely gone now. It is the party of Thornbury, Khan, and the London Islington set. And I think that the knighthood and damehood sort of really reveals how important that position is for Labour.
It does seem strange to many that so many London-specific politicians have been honoured in this New Year's honours list, but perhaps that just speaks to the size of London, the importance of London. I mean, it's about a sixth of the population in just one city, the population of England, that is, and a huge number of seats in the House of Commons, a huge power base for the Labour Party. I mean, much of the cabinet in London, but perhaps this is just reflecting the political makeup of the Labour Party as it is in Parliament.
Maybe. But I mean, it was already sort of mentioned that, Emily Thornberry got passed up for the big job and was very magnanimous about it and was curiously sure at the time to make sure that everybody knew that she was being so good about it. And, the cynic in you wonders whether she was told at the time, don't worry, hold on, don't badmouth the government, don't say anything out of line because there's a ladyship in it for you down the line. And, I mentioned in the article that there was that whole round 2018 when Boris Johnson called her Lady Nugie and was told off by John Bercow for doing it. And, it's just kind of funny that it comes around now and now she is Lady Nugie. It's funny, and it's also sort of, I just think it's ripe for sending up because so much of this is sort of beyond parody. The problem that I think lots of former Labour voters as well have in this country since 2019 election and the most recent election is that they feel like there's no party that represents them. I mean, I was keen to point out in the piece that the Conservatives aren't angels in relation to honours or peerages for friends, and we know Rishi Sunak failed Prime Minister David Cameron a Lord, and in the last honours, one of the big Tory donors was given a knighthood. So it's not like Labour is the only party that does this, but there's just something really distasteful about suspect, I think, about the kind of not quite sort of cronyism, but just the sort of little club feel about all of this. Obviously Sadiq Khan is a successful mayor. There's lots of Londoners who think that he's brilliant because London is full of people who, live an unfeasibly wealthy life, who don't need to rely on cars to get around, who can live in this kind of strange other world that is completely different from the kind of Londoners who are penalised by ULEZ, crippled by rising crime rates, rising house rates, all the rest of it. So I just think that it says something about what Labour has become, particularly under Keir Starmer, even more than it was under Blair. And I'm not sure this is going to go down amongst the sort of normal world of voters very, very well. The Labour Party has, in its first few months, made a series of very unpopular decisions. And I think going into the new year, this will be yet another one.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out as we approach 2025. But for now, Ella Whelan, thank you so much for joining us here on Good Afternoon Britain. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Now, if you didn't get everything on your Christmas list this year, how about 50 grand? Yes, £50,000 in tax-free cash. That for your new year. It really could be yours in our biggest ever Great British giveaway. Here's all the details you need to enter.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Indeeding, we're going to have a look at how the... Indeeding? That's not a word. Indeed, we're going to have a look at how the rest of the world is bringing in the new year. And, most importantly of all, we're going to be doing some party planning here in the studio with cheese and with wine. See you second.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The BBC has been branded jaw-achingly stupid, not by me, by the way, over its decision to cast black and ethnic minority actors in the historical drama of Wolf Hall. Now, is this a forward-thinking idea or nonsense? And are we rewriting history? Henry, I mean, the Tudors were real-life people. They were pretty much white.
Well, some of these shows depart so much from historical context anyway that maybe it doesn't make any difference. But I think just generally we've got a problem in this country with portraying history in its correct sense. You can't change history. And I think it's about the motivation. If the motivation is to sort of to make a political point, then I think it's wrong.
What I find kind of tedious about people finding this instant jaw-droppingly stupid, Jesus was portrayed by somebody who's half Slovak and half Irish. Moses was portrayed in the Exodus by an Englishman. So, you know, same with Anne Boleyn, you know, was portrayed by Natalie Portman, who was Jewish. So if this is the one thing that's getting people angry, then there's something deeper within that rage, because I think Hollywood's been doing that, where people...
When you say something deeper, do you think there is a hidden racism and people are complaining about this?
Well, I think for some, maybe yes. I can't speak for everybody because this news dropped today. I don't know why they are thinking that it's egregious, but there absolutely must be some underlying racism if this is the only one that you're upset about.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Happy New Year. It's 25 minutes past 2, and we're counting down in Britain. And as we have been counting down here until midnight, of course, other parts of the world have already started to celebrate the new year. Yes, New Zealand brought in 2025 about 2 hours ago, but here are the celebrations in Sydney, Australia, just over an hour ago. What a marvellous display they had. 9 tonnes of fireworks, 6.3 million Australian dollars spent on what is a celebration the City of Sydney knows the world has been watching. It's a bit of a strong game for London to live up to, but I'm sure we will, and not long to wait now. But of course, as those parties are kicking off down under, you might well be planning a party of your own back in good old Blighty. Delighted to be joined in the studio by the broadcaster and journalist Ryan Mark Parsons, showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci, and the founder of Mouse and Grape, Jessica Summer. And Jessica, we're going to start with you, not just because you're clearly bribing me with all of this wonderful display of what do we have here?
So we've gone for bubbles because we're celebrating the end of 2024, and it's been a huge year for lots of people, and it's a really great time to celebrate. So we've got a Prosecco, we've got a Cava and a Champagne.
OK, a Prosecco, a Cava and a Champagne. Now, a lot of people would say, aren't these all the same thing?
So they are all sparkling wine, but they are all very different. Obviously made in different countries, but there are also different wine-making techniques that go into them. So your Cava and your Champagne are made in the traditional way. So you'll have some flavours there of light, buttery, biscuity characteristics, but your Prosecco is very fruity because it's made using the Charmat method.
Ooh. And what is that method?
So it's basically made in stainless steel tanks, so it's not the fermentation in the bottle, and it's in the bottle that you get the yeasty flavours. So it's more fruity. So if you like your fruit, Prosecco is the one to go for. If you like something a little bit more complex, then Champagne or Cava.
Now, I was going to say, I wonder if I can guess, but I do actually know.
You do know.
Which of these ones are which.
These guys don't know.
These guys don't know. That is true. Oh, that might be a game for a second. But shall we do one of these taste tests? So, oh, I'm going to have to give the game away, guys. I'm so sorry. So this is the Cava.
So, actually, this is the Prosecco.
Oh, right, OK. I didn't know. We could have done that all along. This is the Prosecco, right?
So cheers.
Oh, cheers. Marvellous.
So
I'm holding my glass in completely different way.
So if you hold it down here, and then if you just have a little smell first, and just see what you can smell. So.
Oh yeah, it's sort of. Well, I was about to say it's fruity.
It is fruity, but you've got like apples and pears kind of flavours there, and then if you have a sip. What you'll notice with this Prosecco is that it fizzes up straight away like sherbet.
Yes.
And it's also very fine and velvety, and that's the sign of a really good quality Prosecco.
OK, so if it sort of rushes to the roof of your mouth, I was about to say that means it's fresh, but it doesn't mean it's fresh.
No,
I suppose the best ones are sort of slightly aged.
It's called the mousse, basically, which is the fizzy bit. But also, if the bubbles are bigger, for example, it can be a bit more tart and acidic, whereas this will melt more easily and be much more drinkable, basically.
It is incredibly smooth, actually. I think I must have been drinking very cheap Prosecco.
Yes.
This
Prosecco, I do sell it on Mouse and Grape, and it's £17. So it's not too expensive, I'd say, like a really good entry level. For the Cava, you'd be looking at around £20, and then our Champagne would be £45.
Well, shall we move on to the Cava then?
Yes.
And give this a bit of a taste test.
So this is our next one.
Right. I need to learn to hold it by the stem and not by the glass.
Well, we'll do swirling for this one.
Okay.
So if you do that,
right,
and then smell, and you'll get more of the aromas by swirling it.
Yes.
And then if you put your hand over the top and then swirl and then sniff,
I'm learning all the tips
you get even more. So with this bouquet, it's made with Spanish varieties, grape varieties. So would you like to try some of this, Ryan Mark?
What's it?
This is Cava,
really?
yes.
Okay.
And I'll give you the Champagne.
No,
we're not. So with the Cava, it's Spanish varieties, grape varieties. So with your Champagne, they're the Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier and Pinot Noir that we'd expect. So you get very different characteristics in both.
But the difference between Cava and Champagne is obviously regional.
Yes.
One is Spain, one is a specific region of France. What else is there in the difference?
So you've got the different grape varieties, and then you've also got the different climate as well, because obviously in Spain it's a lot warmer. Champagne region, you're in the north there, so the temperatures will have an effect on the taste of the grapes, because obviously if it's warmer, there's more sugar in the grapes, and in climates where it is warm, you get more like stone fruit into tropical flavours, where if it's cooler, it's more citrus flavours. So in Champagne or in the UK, we make great sparkling wine, so it'll be similar profiles of Champagne and in the UK.
This is what people who make English sparkling wine always say, that they're not allowed to call it Champagne, but it's the same soil type, it's the same climate.
It's very similar, and it will have its own unique terroir. And what terroir means is basically the culture, the environment, the climate, all of those things coming together to make it uniquely either French or British.
OK, well, I'm going to then compare this Cava
with the Champagne.
With this Champagne. I'll do the whizzy.
Yeah, do the whizzy roundy thing.
Right, OK. Right.
Is there a rule of thumb? Because, you know, like red wine might go better with lamb, white with chicken. How does it work when it comes to the world of champagnes and Prosecco's with pairings for the nibbles for the party tonight?
That's a really, really good question. So in terms of the champagnes, I think can go with much richer foods because it's got more complexity. So if you think of things that have been like deep fried, basically, because champagne and fish and chips is a really great combination.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's very oily and obviously the bubbles and the acidity cut through the fattiness. So it would be lovely with any kind of canapes, basically,
But
that you'd have.
interesting, I suppose, Carver, because it's sweeter, might not be with... You might not want the sort of sugariness with the fish and chips. You might want something sharper like a champagne.
Yeah, so actually you can have, with any of these, you'd have either dry or sweet. So all of these are dry examples, but you can get sweet versions of each of these.
Oh, it's awfully complicated.
There is a lot to it that you don't realise, but as long as you're enjoying it and you like what you're having, then that's the most important thing.
The best advice. But I think I've learnt today that Prosecco more fruity, Carver more sweet, and Champagne more citrusy.
Almost.
I was so hoping I'd pass the test. I was so hoping. What did I get wrong?
I'd say the takeaway would be that Carver and Champagne are made in the same traditional method, and the Prosecco is more fruity, definitely that.
Right.
But you can get dry or sweet in all of those.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jessica.
You're welcome.
For coming in, for sharing your wonderful fizzy wines, for want of a better collective term, for all of these bottles. And thank you for sharing all of your tips as well ahead of
You're
New
very
Year.
welcome.
Really appreciate it. Well, I should say that you can join the GB News Ultimate Countdown to 2025 with or without a glass of champagne in hand. Yes, Patrick, Bev, Emily and Darren and Ben will all be together for a very special show tonight. GB News New Year's Live from 10 o'clock. We'll be showing those magical fireworks in London and have a lot of special guests, so do join us and avoid the horrific weather outside. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more coming on today's show, including this perennial question: will we ever stop the boats?
Your headlines at 2:33. New Zealand has been the first to usher in the new year with a firework display in Auckland, closely followed by Australia, who celebrated with fireworks over Sydney Harbour. But as the world prepares to welcome in 2025, severe weather is set to hamper Britain's New Year's events. The Edinburgh Hogmanay celebrations have been cancelled due to severe weather conditions. Heavy rain and high winds are causing disruption in much of the country, with blizzards forecast in Scotland and widespread cancellations of New Year's Eve events. Almost every part of the UK is covered by at least one or multiple Met Office weather warnings. Fireworks displays in Newcastle's quayside have been cancelled, while Blackpool and North Yorkshire are also reporting cancellations. Meanwhile, City Hall in London says they're monitoring weather conditions ahead of the capital's annual New Year's Eve fireworks display this evening. Former England football manager Gareth Southgate, actor Stephen Fry and gardener Alan Titchmarsh are among some of the famous names included on this year's New Year's honours list. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has also been knighted, sparking fury among some amid London's spiralling crime rate. Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of rewarding failure, as knife crime has increased in the capital by 50% since Khan took office in 2016. The Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philps said Londoners would be furious. The London Mayor was also responsible for rolling out the controversial ULEZ scheme in Greater London, which critics say hit the poorest workers the hardest. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Sir Sadiq said he was truly humbled to receive the honour. Nigel Farage has delivered his New Year message from Blenheim Palace, the birthplace of Sir Winston Churchill. In his message to the nation, he speaks about why he jumped back into the political arena, becoming a grandfather, the optimism he has for the country, and his belief that Reform UK can make Britain great again. But he fears we've been let down by previous governments for decades.
You know, the fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people, and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of.
New Year's Eve revellers in Wales are being urged to drink sensibly to help the country's ambulance service, which has declared a critical incident after a huge increase in demand. The service said there were more than 340 calls waiting to be answered when the incident was declared last night. At the same time, more than half of the Trust's ambulance vehicles were waiting to hand over patients outside the hospitals. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the year, it is going to be unsettled, outbreaks of rain and also some snow and some strong winds too, with multiple Met Office warnings in force, so do keep an eye on those if you're out celebrating New Year's Eve tonight. And it's all because low pressure is taking hold, dragging in some frontal systems, bringing in a squeeze in the isobars, so some strong winds and some outbreaks of rain. This lingers around northern parts of Wales, northern parts of England through much of the afternoon. It generally clears parts of Scotland, but plenty of blustery showers here and likely to see some disruption as a result of earlier rain across Scotland, where we have the amber warning issued. But across the far south and southeast, that's going to be the driest of the weather, but still plenty of cloud around, but largely mild across the south and southeast too. As we head into this evening, we'll still see longer spells of rain just to the north of Scotland, bringing in some snow across parts of Shetland, and fairly cloudy with some rain and drizzle to the south of this, similar across Northern Ireland too. And we'll continue to see those longer spells of rain across parts of Wales, northern and central parts of England. This could be heavy and rather persistent at times, and still staying largely dry across the far south and southeast. But as we head into the evening, it is going to remain unsettled if you are out and about celebrating New Year's. Still continuing to see outbreaks of rain across northern and central parts. Dry to the south, yes, but it is going to be fairly windy here. And we're going to see plenty of showers move through across Scotland. These falling as snow, mainly across hills, but also to lower levels too. And it is going to start to feel particularly chilly across northern areas too. Remaining slightly mild to the south, but through the day we'll start to see outbreaks of rain slowly creep their way in here. And it will start to turn chillier once this clears through too, with a very brisk northerly flow starting to cross the country to the north of this rain band. So bringing in some wintry showers and feeling very chilly in the wind too. Still slightly milder to the south, but it will turn chillier through the course of the afternoon.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. In the Highland, the A832 is closed in both directions for a landslip between Fortrose and Avoch. Queues on the M6 northbound in Cheshire. Lanes 1 and 2 are closed for an overturned lorry if you're travelling between junction 17 Sandbach towards 18 Middlewich. Queues in Stoke-on-Trent. Now Port Hill Road southbound, the entry slip road is partially blocked at Port Hill Bank due to a shed load. We're seeing slow traffic in Norwich on King Street and Koblenz Avenue between Brackendale and the Norwich train station. Slow at the moment if you're travelling through Towcester on the A5 London Road. And we're also seeing queuing traffic in Canning Town. Slow for the A13 Newham Way just before the Canning Town flyover. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 20 to 3, and there's plenty more coming up on today's show. But before then, at 3 o'clock, Martin Daubney is, of course, up. And Martin, what's coming on your show?
We've got an absolute banger of a show. The biggest firework in the box today. Put low. Many are calling the rising star of the parliamentary term of 2024. What's he say about Nigel Farage's Christmas message? And what about the year ahead in politics? The call for more transparency on data, on immigration, on crime, on benefits, on tax. fearlessly asking all the right questions. He's on today's show, and of course it wouldn't be New Year's without a big old moan about the New Year's honours list. Arise, Sir Sadiq. Well, that's got a few people choking on their cornflakes this morning. And of course, Sir Gareth Wokegate being rewarded for failure. The guy's an absolute loser. And why is he getting a gong for that? And what about Sir Bobby Moore? He was the England captain who lifted the World Cup. He never even got a gong. And also in the show, I've got two amazing kids, Charlie and Molly. They are real-life Santa's little helpers. This year they decided to sell all their old toys and give all their own Christmas gifts to a local children's hospice, raising over 500 quid, restoring faith in humanity. Got a wicked show coming up, 3 till 6. See you then.
That sounds marvellous, Martin. I do have to pick you up. We do this every time. Don't come for Gareth Southgate.
Oh, come on.
He got our boys very, very far.
No. Silver medal is not what we want. We want the golden gong. He's been rewarded for failure. I was saying all along, Tom, you remember I was asking for him to be sacked many, many moons ago, and now he gets the top gong. I think it's an injustice.
Well, there we go. Oh, Martin, I was just told him, but this is cheeky. You're celebrating that Nottingham Forest is in second.
Well, that's true. But Nottingham Forest won 2 European Cups, and that's an unsurpassed record. But you've got me there. But no, I tell you what.
I have to say, Martin, that completely was not me because I'd forgotten that. But that was a cheeky monkey in my ear.
Whoever it was, I'm going to get in a minute.
Well, Martin, I'm looking forward to your show. It's going to be an absolute rip-roarer, as always, and a very happy New Year.
And you.
Now, GB News has been told that the government will never solve the small boats crisis unless it brings in an effective deterrent. It comes as the number of illegal migrants who crossed the Channel this year reached nearly 37,000. That's 25% higher than last year's total. Well, the former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith, told us that more needs to be done to put an end to this crisis.
The best tactics are disruption. The criminal justice system does not work well, in my experience, with international organised crime. The best you can really hope for is to disrupt the gangs, take their money off them, take them out of the business. Bringing people into the criminal justice system is really quite difficult to do. So, I mean, I think there has been an uptick in activity. I think, the outreach to other countries, other European countries and beyond is important. But this is international organised crime, so it's really difficult, for a UK agency, be that the new Border Security Council, National Crime Agency, to be able to smash the gangs on their own. They need the cooperation of the Europeans, of the source and transit countries, so there's a really big overseas outreach element that's required if we're going to make significant progress into this industry. I think it's right that the government are talking to source and transit countries. That is a key objective, and I think that will help in disrupting the international organised crime gangs, but it's not a panacea. It's a lot of work to get an agreement with a single country on returns, because there's usually something in it for them. So I'll be really interested to see how the government gets on in getting those kinds of agreements. And there's a lot of countries out there where the migrants are coming through, be they source or transit countries. So it's quite a big undertaking for them. I think the EU countries, many of the member states, are now moving to the right on immigration. They are concerned, their communities are concerned about the levels, because they are now doing interdictions on the high seas between, places like Libya and Italy, which wasn't the case a couple of years ago. So I think the mood music is changing a little bit on how they patrol their external frontier. But we need to remember there's a huge number of migrants, asylum seekers already in the EU who'd very much like to come here. What I haven't seen is a real deterrent. The only real change we've seen from this government is the abolition of the Rwanda scheme, which would have said to people, look, I'm sorry, we're not going to consider your asylum application or your human rights application in this country. You can go to Rwanda for that. I thought that was a really bold attempt by the last government, although they never got anywhere with it because of continual legal challenges over a great many years to thwart it. I thought that was the boldest attempt since Australia to try and set up an interdiction policy, which would have been a deterrent and would have made people perhaps who are already in a safe country think twice about making that perilous journey.
Well, interesting stuff there. Let's dissect it all with the Executive Director of Migration Watch, Dr. Mike Jones. Mike, thanks so much for joining us here, and very happy New Year's Eve to you. Do you think that it's right that had the Rwanda scheme got off the ground, we wouldn't be seeing the problem we are seeing today?
Well, certainly, I think the Rwanda plan would have acted as a deterrent, because at the end of the day, the only way you're going to stop the boats is to undermine the business model of the gangs. So if you can deport people at critical mass to their country of origin or a third safe country, then obviously the cost-benefit analysis changes for the would-be migrants. You know, they're not going to part with their cash or risk their lives to cross the channel if they know they're going to end up in Rwanda at the end of it. So yeah, I think it would have had a deterrent effect. Was the Rwanda plan bulletproof? Was it watertight? No, it wasn't. There were still loopholes there. But I think the Labour Party are being very naive in not keeping the plan and at the very least trialling it.
It does seem bizarre. All of the different sort of what the Labour Party might describe as gimmicks, what other people would describe as expensive but necessary programmes are all necessary in the first place. Why is it that all of these convoluted schemes are needed to be drawn up when, frankly, what someone in the street might say is just stop the boats, full stop?
I think that's the million-dollar question. I think a pushback policy in the Channel is a complete non-starter because the English Channel is completely unsuited to pushbacks. You'd have lots of casualties. You'd have border force officials being prosecuted for involuntary manslaughter and so on. However, if people do arrive here, many people are asking, well, why can't you send them back to their country of origin? Why do you need Rwanda? Why house them to the tune of billions of pounds? Well, the reason for that, the root cause, is the Human Rights Act. It prevents us from deporting people to countries that are deemed unsafe by the human rights authorities. They call this the principle of non-refoulement. So unless you're prepared to amend the Human Rights Act, then this is just going to continue.
Well, that's the million-pound question. Dr. Mike Jones, thanks so much for being with us and dissecting that. Executive Director of Migration Watch UK. Appreciate your time. Well, much more to come on Good Afternoon Britain, including more than 400 pubs in England and Wales have had to shut their doors for good in 2024 alone. We're discussing that next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Donna Ida, who joins us now. And Donna, you look spectacular in your gorgeous denim jumpsuit.
Thank you.
And accessories. And it's important, isn't it, sometimes, just to keep things simple?
I always keep things simple. I travel a lot, I work long hours, and I don't want to think too much about what I'm wearing. So for me, one and done is perfect. Good accessories, fresh hair, nice makeup, and you can go anywhere, including GB News when you didn't know what was happening.
There we go.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Straight off the plane.
Can we ask you some of our top denim questions?
Yes.
Because Stephen Dixon, the presenter of The Breakfast Show who's just on, said that double denim to him is an absolute no-go.
Oh, what does
Is that true?
Don't have him on again, darling.
OK. We're telling me
I love double denim.
Really?
I love it. I think it is so cool.
Does it have to be a different
I was going to say double denim, same colour.
Or same
I
tones?
like the... For me, I actually do like the same. Think Saint Laurent 70s. There's an amazing one that we're doing that's going to look great on you in the new season. The Joan Jean, we've got the City Slicker shirt. Oh, it's amazing. If it's done well, it's perfect. And I like it in a paler blue, but a good mid to dark. Very chic.
Yeah, you go.
No, well, I was just thinking, little old me, not quite sure
You'd look amazing,
what to wear
wouldn't
this
it?
morning. How
was a
do
bit
guys
stressed.
pull off denim?
For me, if I was dressing you, I would have put you in a pair of jeans this morning with his amazing jumper. Gorgeous watch.
Black, blue?
Black denim I do like. Men don't like it so much. Men like charcoal denim.
Oh, I don't like grey.
Charcoal. I love grey, and the best seller for men is charcoal denim.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 3. Now, I'm sure many of you will be heading to the pub later on to see in the new year. But sadly, these are difficult times for the British boozer. The number of pubs in England and Wales, 39,000. Dipped below 39,000 for the first time ever in 2024. More than 400 pubs shut down in the last 12 months. Let's dissect that now with the broadcaster and journalist Ryan Mark Parsons and the showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci. Stephanie, it just seems every single month here we hear about more pubs that are shutting down.
We're spoilt for choice, to be honest, Tom. I think there's too much going on the high street that is vying for people's attention when people are actually going out. You know, with this cost of living crisis, a lot of people are not seeing the pub as an integral part of their social life anymore, which is quite sad because one thing I hear from tourists is they love coming to a British pub. Yes. You don't get a British pub anywhere else in the world, and that's why we should fight to save for them to be open, but it's hard times. And also the appeal of pubs is losing it with Gen Z who are increasingly becoming alcohol-free.
Yes, Ryan Mark Parsons, is this all your fault? Your Generation Z, you're not drinking enough.
Well, I drink too much, actually. I drink way too much. I'm definitely the anomaly in terms of Gen Z. But yes, there is this growing propensity not to drink amongst my generation, and I don't get it. I don't get it. I love going to the pub. I love going to the bars. I love going to the nightclubs. I love drinking. I love espresso martinis. And I think people should drink and celebrate, especially on New Year's Eve. But it is really sad to hear about pubs closing. London's been hit the hardest. 55 pubs closed. But this is under Sadiq Khan's leadership. Amy Lame, who was presiding as London's night czar. This all happened during the 8 years, and we're seeing less and less nighttime venues open. 3,000 nighttime venues shut down in the past 5 years. This is a really, really sad state of affairs.
OK, I'm going to pass the hardest question to you, Stephanie Tecci, in the last minute. What are we going to do about it?
Well, I definitely think pubs need to put on more incentives to make people want to go to the pub again. And also, we need the government to help our pubs. That's the thing. If they actually value it as a part of a British institution, help it survive.
Yeah, stop taxing it quite so much, perhaps. Well, Stephanie Tecci, Ryan Mark Parsons, thanks so much for being with us on this show. It's been a delight and a very happy new year as we all count down to 2025. Indeed, if you're feeling like doing that, you can do that with us here at GB News. Patrick, Bev, Emily, Darren and Ben will all be together for a very special GB News New Year live show, 10 p.m. tonight. That's the countdown here on GB News. Don't miss it. Well, thanks all for watching Good Afternoon Britain. Don't go anywhere, though. It, of course, is the one and only Martin Daubney next.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we end the year, it is going to be unsettled, outbreaks of rain and also some snow and some strong winds too, with multiple Met Office warnings in force, so do keep an eye on those if you're out celebrating New Year's Eve tonight. And it's all because low pressure is taking hold, dragging in some frontal systems, bringing in a squeeze in the isobars, so some strong winds and some outbreaks of rain. This lingers around northern parts of Wales, northern parts of England through much of the afternoon. It generally clears parts of Scotland, but plenty of blustery showers here and likely to see some disruption as a result of earlier rain across Scotland, where we have the amber warning issued. But across the far south and southeast, that's going to be the driest of the weather, but still plenty of cloud around, but largely mild across the south and southeast too. As we head into this evening, we'll still see longer spells of rain just to the north of Scotland, bringing in some snow across parts of Shetland, and fairly cloudy with some rain and drizzle to the south of this, similar across Northern Ireland too. And we'll continue to see those longer spells of rain across parts of Wales, northern and central parts of England. This could be heavy and rather persistent at times, and still staying largely dry across the far south and southeast. But as we head into the evening, it is going to remain unsettled if you are out and about celebrating New Year's. Still continuing to see outbreaks of rain across northern and central parts. Dry to the south, yes, but it is going to be fairly windy here, and we're going to see plenty of showers move through across Scotland. These falling as snow, mainly across hills, but also to lower levels too, and it is going to start to feel particularly chilly across northern areas too. Remaining slightly mild to the south, but through the day we'll start to see outbreaks of rain slowly creep their way in here, and it will start to turn chillier once this clears through too, with a very brisk northerly flow starting to cross the country to the north of this rain band. So bringing in some wintry showers and feeling very chilly in the wind too. Still slightly milder to the south, but it will turn chillier through the course of the afternoon.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won $25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name